I'm well late with this. It came out like 3 weeks ago, but I'm a completionist, so it is time. There's a few things you all got to get up to date with what's been happening if you haven't been following the campaign trail. It always makes me laugh because there are people out there who go, yeah, Richard, I only know about American politics because of you. I get all of my stuff. I get all of my stuff for you because I can't handle it. So, by the way, that is terrible and not something you should do, but I promise I don't steer you wrong. I try not to do that. So things that have happened between debates, and some of this happened after this debate, but it's worth knowing about, and so we'll get into it. Mike Pence did what I told you he was going to do, and he suspended his campaign. He dropped out. He was polling at between 3 and 5%, depending on who you talk to. He's one of the weakest vice presidents I've ever seen in terms of having a run for president. He literally had... There's nowhere in the political landscape for Mike Pence, because in a post-Trump world where populist republicanism is a real thing, Mike Pence is despised by loyal Trumpists because he's perceived to be part of the establishment that wouldn't stop the count or stop the steal or whatever the fuck they thought he was going to do. It's completely unreasonable. Mike Pence literally had no legal vehicle through which he could do the things loyalist Trump supporters wanted him to do. He could have boxed a little bit clever and pretended he was going to do something and said he was going to do something and then just not done it. But obviously Republican, he's a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. He's an old school Republican. He's your granddad's type of Republican. I've said it many times, you know. You walk past him and he smells like mahogany, and well-polished mahogany. He's got that fucking Action Man haircut. You know, he won't go out and like even have dinner with another woman because he thinks it's a disgrace to his wife. You know, he's the old school Republican. You know, he's that Christian guy who thinks it gives him a pass for like his bitter homophobia because he says, I hate the sin, but I love the sinner. You know, that type of Republican is just an anachronism. They are being phased out from the Republican Party. And, you know, it's just not a very energetic candidate in and of himself. So Mike Pence dropped out. I mean, he had a good go in the last debate we covered. He tried to be funny. Remember, he made that cringeworthy joke about having sex with a teacher, referring to his wife. And then he said it was time for schools to straighten up when he was talking about trans issues in schools. But in the end... it's Mike Pence. There was nowhere for him to go. And in all the time I've been covering American politics, very hard to think of a time when there's been a vice president that's had a presidential run after their vice presidency and they've done so poorly. Certainly I don't think there's been one in my lifetime. But Pence should just, you know, stay gone. You'll always be a good party member, but in terms of you winning, there's no chance. The other thing that went down was Tim Scott, who you will see in the upcoming debate. He dropped out literally after the debate. Tim Scott just abruptly ended his presidential campaign. Now, I've talked a lot about Tim Scott. There was a weird thing going on with Tim Scott. I don't know if you caught it. There was all this coverage in the mainstream media about how Tim Scott's got a girlfriend and nobody knows who she is, but he keeps talking about her. And I always thought, and journalists were threatening to like dig into this. It was very weird. And I got the sense that, because journalists will do this if you're Republican, I got the sense they were like alluding that he was like maybe a closet gay guy, and they were like teasing that they were going to out them. I don't really know. It was very weird. And then that coverage went away. The debate happened and then he dropped out. Now, it wouldn't be the first time that there's been some fuckery like that gone on in a presidential run. I've told you before about what happened with Ross Perot. You'll be able to find an interview with him where Ross Perot always claimed he was, for those who don't know, Ross Perot ran as an independent against Clinton and Bush in 92, and Ross Perot is the highest polling ever independent in American history, was sort of like showing there could be a third way. And when Ross Perot dropped out, Ross Perot said in one interview that's been largely scrubbed, but because of the internet you can find it now. Ross Perot dropped out, and he said a bunch of goons in suits came to him and said, we've got like pornographic photographs of your daughter which we're going to release into the media if you don't drop out the race. And that was the last straw for him. He said it was Bush's goons. He said it was the Republicans that did it to him. But then that never got talked about. There was like that classic incuriosity from the media. A lot of people to this day don't really know why Ross Perot dropped out when he did, and sort of just put it down to, yeah, he was polling high, but he didn't have a viable path to victory, and it was costing him his own money because he was a self-funded campaign. I've never been inclined to believe that, but as Redditors say, I mean, after all, I'm a right-wing conspiracy nut, aren't I? So, but anyway, you'll be able to find that quote, and a lot of campaign trail journalists wrote about it at the time. It's preserved in like Hunter S. Thompson. I think it's mentioned in his book Better Than Sex, which was covering 92. Anyway, so I felt there was like maybe some shades of that, but maybe not. I've talked a lot about Tim Scott, and Tim Scott is great for the Republican Party. Tim Scott is a black guy, very, very religious Christian, who comes out and says the American dream still works. He peddles that lie to American people. Any American under 30 knows the American dream does not work, cannot work. The system is broken and getting more and more broken every day, and future generations are going to suffer for the indolence and incompetence of generations that went before them, particularly within the political sphere. But anyway, Tim Scott's great because there's nothing Republicans like more to shield themselves from allegations of racism than a black Republican who tells the old bootstrap story. I pull myself up by my bootstraps. And Tim Scott, that's all he has. He has no policy ideas. His plans to fix America are always the same. Every time he runs, every time he talks about this shit, he just says America has to get back to being a Judeo-Christian country where that informs all of the decision making and all of the laws, and anybody can gosh darn make it if they just try. That's what he says, and then he'll tell and he's charismatic in a way. He's got this like folksy charm. And he'll say, I was raised by a single mother, and, she always put food on the table, and I worked hard, and look where I am today. I'm proof that the American dream works, and blah, blah, blah. But that's all he's got. And so the Republican Party, it's great when he runs and says all these things, makes us look less like a shower of cunts. But the reality is there's no path to victory with that. You've got to be a bit more... You got to be a bit more ruthless. You got to be a bit more direct. You got to have policy ideas. You got to be a bit more exciting, especially again, post-Trump era. This type of shit does not work, and you got to come out swinging now. And so they say abruptly. It was abrupt, but it was also coming. Tim Scott was polling similarly at about 5-6%. And you can see here in the Associated Press, Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott abruptly announced late Sunday he was dropping out of the 2024 race, a development that surprised his donors and stunned his campaign staff just 2 months before the start of voting in Iowa's lead-off GOP caucuses. We're like 50 days from Iowa. It's coming real quick. Anyway, the South Carolina senator who entered the race in May with high hopes made the surprise announcement on Fox News Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy, one of his closest friends. I love America more today than I did on May 22nd, Scott said Sunday. But when I go back to Iowa, it will not be as a presidential candidate. I'm suspending my campaign. I think the voters, who are the most remarkable people on the planet, have been really clear that they're telling me, not now, Tim. And indeed, not now. And realistically, not ever. But, whatever. He played his part. Chris Christie has been limping on, for those that have kept a mental note of all of the participants. How it works in these debates, the leadership debates, if you've not followed this before, you have to continually meet a polling threshold to be invited to the next one. Everyone gets a go on the first one, but as you go through, the candidates whittle down because there's a higher threshold of polling. And so Chris Christie, he's again polling between 5 and 8%. He's the Republican arm of the Fuck Trump movement, despite having previously worked with and pandered to Trump. And so Chris Christie, he's come in and he has made a bunch of jokes and blah, 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 and done all that shit, and he's limping along and hanging in there. I thought Chris Christie would be gone by now, but just for the context, Chris Christie is on the brink of missing the next debate because he's not hit the polling threshold. You can see Chris Christie was always a long shot. Now he might not even make the next debate. The former New Jersey governor has not met the Republican National Committee's polling thresholds for qualifying for next week's debate, with only a few days left before Monday's deadline, according to Politico analysis. If he fails to make the stage in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, it would exclude the GOP presidential field's biggest critic of former President Donald Trump. The RNC's rules say candidates must hit at least 6% in the polls, so he's back down lower than 6. That meet the committee's requirements. They can use either 2 national surveys or 1 national survey, plus polls from 2 separate early nominating states to meet that threshold. Only 3 candidates have the RNC's requirement for the debate, according to Politico's tracking of the process, and that is Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Vivek Ramaswamy. Trump is skipping the debates. Now, I do just want to point out what did I say at the start when we started doing all the coverage of the campaign trail. I told you that by the end, on that stage, is going to be Vivek, Nikki, and Ron. And so that's all there is to it. Trump swerving it isn't hurting him in the polls, but I think come the election day and indeed come the GOP selection process, I think his absence is certainly going to hurt him. And I will keep saying this because I know people love it when I'm wrong, because they think that I'm right so often. People treat me like an oracle. So when I'm wrong about like an opinion-based thing or a prediction thing, they love to clip it. So I've said it. I do not think the GOP gets in bed with Trump this time. I think it's a political suicide pact. It makes zero sense. Trump is going to be spending even if he was to get the nomination, win the election, he would still be facing indictments. And trust me, if you thought the screeching about the Ukraine phone call and all the fake Russia bullshit was bad, imagine what it's going to be like when he gives himself a fucking presidential pardon for every single crime he's accused of. Oh yeah, it'll be impeachment. I don't even know what impeachment will be on there. It'll be impeachment for, the impeaching. So my prediction's pretty sound. I think Vivek has been a breath of fresh air for the campaign. He's a massive agent of chaos. Spoiler, he's back to being an agent of chaos in this debate. It's probably as outrageous as his first performance. The thing that really is surprising me now is Nikki Haley. She keeps talking about war. She keeps talking about invading Iran. She keeps talking about beef with China. All of a sudden, she's super popular with the type of people that fund those types of things. This will come as no surprise to you because, again, I did tell you that this was coming. Turns out being hawkish is very good if you happen to be, billionaire that's involved in making weapons and other things. And remember, she's been on the board of, I think she was Lockheed. She was on the board of, but anyway, but in the past. You can see here, Nikki Haley bags Coke endorsement in bid to replace Donald Trump. And a powerhouse donor base that has funded conservative causes for more than 2 decades says it is swinging behind Nikki Haley's 2024 presidential bid. Billionaire Charles Koch's network has raised millions in an effort to help Republicans move past Donald Trump. But as the party's voters prepare to begin picking their preferred candidate in January, the ex-president dominates the rest of the field. The Koch endorsement of Mrs. Haley has the potential to reshape the race. The former South Carolina governor is still polling roughly 50 points behind the man she once served as United Nations ambassador, but her headline-grabbing TV debate performances and a recent favorability bump in early voting states, as once crowded Republican field begins to thin out, have given hope to those who want an alternative to Mr. Trump. Now, on this front, what I'll say is it doesn't surprise me that she gets a bump. First of all, the DeSantis campaign has been pretty insipid. It hasn't really been awe-inspiring, but he's done a lot of things that will definitely play well when it comes to voting time. For example, I don't know if you saw it, but I'll bring this up. in a moment. Ron DeSantis got 270 evacuees out of Israel. He organized it and got the private chartered jets because the Biden administration wasn't going to bring them home. And quite smartly what DeSantis did, this is crucial in a presidential run, he went to meet them. He went to meet them, shake their hands, have the photo opportunity. I'm here. I did this. Tell your friends. And so that is going to play nicely, but we'll talk about that in a second. But look, the Nikki Haley bump is pretty simple as I see it. She's been the only Republican that has talked sensibly about abortion. She has said, look, you can be pro-life, you can be pro-choice. None of us should be judging each other on that front. And these draconian rules around women's bodies, speaking as the only female candidate, I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to impose that. We're going to find a way to make it work so women can get, safe abortions if they need to. As I said, out of all the Republican candidates, the rest of them are staunchly pro-life, because remember, they have to lean into the Christian religious right to get their bedrock of support. It's a huge lobbyist block as well as voting block. Nikki Haley has sort of been talking sensibly about abortion at a time when abortion is on the ballot. I don't know why it always ends up on the ballot in American politics. For me, it shows how sort of regressive overall their political landscape is. But it's certainly on there with the Roe v. Wade cancellation. And, funnily enough, there have been a number of elections where I talked about it on the Belly of the Beast podcast. Guess what? Yeah, Republicans got fucking creamed. And so if you want a more in-depth analysis of all of that and what that all means, you can listen to the Belly of the Beast, subscribe to my Substack. But anyway, the reality is that Nikki Haley could be viewed, on abortion at least, as a fucking moderate. Which is crazy, because when it comes to the sanctity of life through the lens of war, she doesn't give a fuck. She just wants to fight all the time. Yeah, I just want to see if I can just bring up a link to that DeSantis story, and then we will realistically be all up to date. Since Hamas attacked Israel October 7th, you can see this is what he did. He went and got 300 Americans that was stranded in Israel. He went and got private airlines to charter 270 people out after literally the Biden administration told them, if you're in Israel and you can't get home, just get a commercial flight. That's what they were told. I mean, I do want to say, I know people have forgotten about this and don't care, because Democrats good, Republicans bad, Biden good, Republican bad, right? But there are still people fucking stranded in Afghanistan from the disastrous pullout. There are still American families that haven't got home yet from Afghanistan. If you can wrap your head around that, how long ago the Afghanistan pullout was. Biden's foreign policies enactments have just been disastrous for America, and really looks like they have no subtlety or nuance when it comes to diplomacy. And when I'm saying that in a post-Trump world, that should really tell you how bad it is. But anyway, DeSantis is going to score big for that. He's going to score bigly, you might say. And it's another thing that plays into this narrative. DeSantis is a doer. DeSantis goes and gets it done. Now, I also talked about on the Belly of the Beast the latest polling data, so I should probably fucking Google that and show you, because it definitely ruffled a bunch of feathers. So this is where we were going into it, and when they took the polling, just as a temperature check, and this was done by, I think it was a New York Times poll, a university, I can't remember which one. Siena College, there it is in the thing. Basically, guess what happened? When they looked at it, in 5 swing states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, Trump was ahead. And when you consider, Biden is from Pennsylvania, right? He's good old Scranton Joe. It really got them worried. These aren't like small amounts. We're talking like 5, 6, 8 points ahead in head-to-head polling. And what they don't tell you in this is, as well, while the gap closes, DeSantis clears Biden as well. I think, and this was really before the Israel problem sort of presented itself, because Biden has an Israel problem, and that is that his administration is heavily divided. I've always said this. There's 2 Democrat parties at war with each other all the time in the DNC. And the traditional Democrat very political animal and a war hawk, and pretty much just Republicans in blue ties, bar one or two policy differences. They always end up winning because they control the apparatus. They've got the Pelosi's and the Clintons and the Obamas and all of that stuff, right, historically. But that's increasingly becoming not true. Younger and younger, more squad-like lefty Bernie radical Democrats are coming through the ranks. And so the problem they've got here is Biden's original policy was to fucking come out and support Israel. We stand with Israel, and if Israel wants to bomb Palestine into oblivion, we're not only going to support it, we'll send them the weapons to do it. And everyone went, I'm a squad Democrat, so I'm actually pro-Hamas. And no, not pro-Palestine. Very much pro-Hamas. Yes, that's right. I'm an anti-Semite masquerading as a concerned humanitarian. And so what's ended up happening is there's this insane fucking conflict going in now where it's like the traditional DNC acolytes of like support Israel, let's get the bombs going, we need them, they're our ally in the Middle East, blah, blah, blah. All the squad people that are like closer to the kind of college brainwashing thing that's going on, they're like, no, Hamas are great. Actually, ceasefire now. Then Hamas break the ceasefire. Another ceasefire now. Hamas break the ceasefire. No, we definitely mean it this time. Let's have a ceasefire now. And it's just like, I don't know, guys, this kind of feels unsustainable to me, but what do I know? I'm a Zionist, evidently. So that's going to fucking play out in the polls. Because, I mean, I don't know if you followed what's going on in America right now. Pro-Hamas marches in broad fucking daylight with Hamas supporters calling, shouting out anti-Semitic slurs to Jewish people on the streets, trying to tear down a Christmas tree. Like, I don't know, like, you guys need a PR operative. You're not winning hearts and minds with this one. Tearing down posters and people who are thought missing from the 1,200 that were murdered on October 7th. You've really got to get your PR shit together. But anyway, it's weird because when a bunch of white dudes with tiki torches were marching along saying Jews shall not replace us, that was a national crisis. That was Trump's America. That was Trump, the most Zionistic president in my lifetime, emboldening white supremacists and anti-Semites. They put it all on him. Now I'm seeing people chanting from the river to the sea and basically calling for the destruction of Israel and by extension all Jews in that area, and everyone's like, yeah, what are you talking about? This is haven't you seen what Netanyahu's done? And I'm like, all that anti-Semitism stuff was just performative. Oh, okay, my bad. So it's a huge mess, and it's going to basically play out in the polls. It's massively going to play out in the polls because the pro-Hamas segment of the Democrat voting bloc, they think Biden's been out of control and has essentially given Israel a green light to commit genocide. That's the statement. I mean, obviously, if you listen to the Hamas, because Hamas is essentially the elected government of Palestine, if you listen to Hamas, the only people that have been killed by Israel are children and poets. So, okay, well, all right, I guess that's accurate. We'll uncritically repeat that lie in all of our Western media. And look, I say that as someone who's been vehemently critical of Israel in the past, but I think Hamas kind of lost the high ground when they air glided into a music festival, killing hundreds of innocent teenagers and young adults just trying to enjoy themselves. Yeah, didn't really think that was good, and find it really easy to condemn that and say, I'm not going to stand with that, and I want the people who committed that atrocity brought to justice, actually. And my version of justice, yeah, it's pretty biblical. Yeah, it is. So that's where I'm at. I don't know how that makes me a Zionist, but whatever. I think if you celebrate that atrocity, I think you're scum. And guess what? Some of your favourite lefty commentators did. So anyway, point being, the reality is this is going to play out in the polls. The Hamas supporters think Biden has given a green light for Israel to commit genocide. The Jewish contingent and the non-Hamas supporting contingent and the very hawkish, we need Israel in the Middle East because we want to go and invade all those Middle Eastern countries at some point in the future. They obviously think that allowing all of this Hamas shenanigans to go on and not being strong enough on it is bad. And so this is how you end up with these conflicting statements. You've got Joe Biden going out, and he can't finish a sentence, bless him. He's really fucked now. He's very bad. I think he called Xi Jinping Deng Xiaoping the other day. Like, he's fucking gone. But anyway, he comes out and says, we will always stand with Israel and support Israel's right to defend itself. And Israel have the right to retaliate. And then his press secretary comes out and goes, but we must remember that, Islamophobia is the real issue here. And I'm like, I'm getting whiplash, you motherfuckers. Like, I can't keep up with where you're at. So, listen, I said it. Biden's got an Israel problem. The Republicans appear to at least have some sort of clarity on this issue, which you're about to see in the debate. You might not like it, but they're all in lockstep, and it basically says, yep, let's keep the bombs. Israel good, bombing good. I'll also just add, because I know Jice was in the chat, head mod Jice, there is a triggering segment in this discussion where they start talking about Ukraine, and Vivek, I think, calls Zelensky a Nazi in cargo pants or something. So I'm just saying, bro, like, I don't know, go for a walk around the block, take some deep breaths, because it gets intense right about that one. And obviously someone's going to go W take in the chat, and you're going to go, get out of here, Fita. and then eat an entire pack of snooze. So let's all remain calm. Right? So, without further ado, you are now all caught up. Oh, no, you're not all caught up. While we're talking about Vivek being a fucking lunatic, just one little bit of story. We're going to get the humour levels up now. It all got a bit serious, didn't it, there? I was repeating Zionist talking points, and it made everyone nervous and sad. Vivek, obviously, is waded in, and he had some ideas about Israel versus Hamas, and you can see there, Ramaswamy calls for Israel to kill all Hamas leaders in a similar way to the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. So fuck. I told you, an agent of chaos. Ramaswamy speaking at the Republican Jewish Coalition's annual leadership conference in Las Vegas, boomed that the Jewish state had an absolute and unequivocal right to defend itself. He said, if Israel and Mossad want to take out every last leader of Hamas, wherever they may be hiding, from Doha to Dresden, host a red wedding. The next time the Hamas leaders show up, they should go ahead and do it. American politics, you sustain me. Right. Now, let's do it. And with that, I've got to prepare you as well. Even though this debate was on NBC, so a couple of other things to know. This debate was on NBC. I think it's the most well-moderated debate we've had. It doesn't descend into too much of a shit show at any point, and they set the rules very clearly, and they ensure that the candidates adhere to them. They did a much better job than Fox, which probably doesn't surprise some of you. But I'll add, they also can't resist the democracy on the ballot 2024. They can't resist that because they're American. It's just in their blood, And the other thing to be mindful of, this is in DeSantis' backyard. It's in Florida. Remember, he's the very well-liked, won by a landslide governor of Florida. So when you're hearing all of that support, just factor that in. Remember, it is his backyard. It's in his own manner. Right, let's go.
Tonight, a critical test in the race for the White House. 5 Republicans battling to become their party's 2024 presidential nominee. The candidates ready to make their case on why they're prepared to be commander-in-chief amid 2 wars on the world stage.
I can't do it already. Look at the way that... Amid 2 wars. Dinner, dinner. It's like that fucking clip at XQC watching the airstrikes coming.
How they plan to tackle stubborn inflation and how they can unite a deeply divided electorate. Who is best to take on President Biden? And can any of them first beat former President Trump, who's far ahead in the polls? The candidates are here. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott.
from NBC News.
I like the way they actually, in this one as well, they set them all up like like wrestling. Like they've all got their own little titles and angles, and you know, by God, it's Randy Orton's music. I hear voices in my head. By God, that's actually Joe Biden's theme tune. I don't know where I am today. Dementia.
The Republican presidential debate. Live from the Adrian Arst Center in Miami, Florida.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Republican presidential debate. I'm Lester Holt, anchor of NBC Nightly News.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Welker, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press.
Hello, I'm Hugh Hewitt, host of Salem Radio's The Hugh Hewitt Show.
We are now just 68 days from the Iowa caucuses when Republican primary voters will begin to determine their party's nominee for president. Tonight, we'll question 5 candidates seeking that nomination on how they're best prepared to be commander.
Now listen, I do just want to say this guy's fucking hairline, dog. like, listen, bro. If it starts here, it's over. Like that is crazy, dude. Like you are holding on beyond belief there, my man. Holy shit.
Commander-in-Chief. And, of course, how best to bring down prices impacting Americans across the country. We have 2 hours for a serious debate on the issues that matter most to Republican voters. Candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds for answers and the opportunity for a closing statement. Follow-ups will be at the discretion of all of us at the table, the moderators. Invoking a candidate's name or policy does not necessarily mean the mentioned candidate is entitled to a response. We want to caution all the candidates not to interrupt or speak over your fellow debaters. If you talk over each other, the voters can't hear you. And given the critical issues we're facing specifically on the world stage, we want everyone to hear every word.
I love how Chris Christie, he just can't believe
Continued
it.
interruptions may result
Just
in loss of
smirking to
additional
himself.
questions. And to our audience, please hold your applause so that the candidates can be heard. With that said, let's have a good debate. All right, our first question, the opening question, is one for all of you. Donald Trump is...
Now, by the way, just before we get into the actual questions, I do want to say that really, that is how all of them should have opened up. And they are pretty strict with it because Vivek goes off the rails very quickly. And good for them, because it's like, I don't know, these things don't have to be a fucking farce, right? These things don't have to be a farce. It's good ratings if you allow it to descend into a farce. And so obviously the only reason, keep in mind, NBC will tell you Republicans are evil. And then, do you want to host a Republican debate? Do we? Yeah, of course. It's free fucking content. And these have been some of the historically lowest watched debates in history and since they've been televised. Because Trump's not there, and Trump is box office for good or ill. So here we are. The first question, Trump.
Is the first ex-president in more than 100 years to run for the White House again. And he remains popular among Republican primary voters as his legal challenges mount. Governor DeSantis, let me begin with you on this one. Speak to Republican voters who are supporting Donald Trump. Why should you and not him be the Republican nominee to face Joe Biden a year from now?
This country is in trouble, and the elites that have put us here, they don't care about you. They don't care that you're having to grapple with higher grocery prices or have higher gas prices. They don't care that your family's less secure because of the open border that's allowed drugs and even terrorists to come into this country. Well, I care. I am not going to sit idly by and let this country continue its downward spiral.
DeSantis
we need
cares.
leadership, and we need
And
it
he's
now.
totally
I'll
not
take
an
the
elite.
hits, I'll take the arrows, I'll take the slings, because ultimately it's not about me. It's about you. I will fight for you. I will make sure to lead this country's revival, and I will win for you and your family. Actions speak louder than words. We don't have time for excuses, and it's not something that we're going to be able to have all these distractions. As a veteran, I will get the job done. Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing. In Florida, I showed how it's done.
That's a reference to those election results that I showed you.
Historic victory, including a massive landslide right here in Miami-Dade County. That's how we have to do it. So I promise you this, as the nominee, next November I'll get the job done, and as president, I will deliver.
Your time is up. Let me turn to Ambassador Haley.
Hits all its talking points.
Turn to Ambassador Haley. Why you and not the former president?
Yeah, why you,
Well,
Nikki?
I think you look at the fact that we're almost $34 trillion in debt. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
This is the candidate that wants to increase military spending.
50% of American families can't afford diapers. 1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bills. You have parents who are worried about what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. There's
So with all of that, let's bomb Iran.
no transparency. We have anti-Semitism all over our college campuses, and students feel unsafe. You've got an open border where terrorists can come through, and we've got wars happening all over us, and there are dangers around us. You know, everybody wants to talk about President Trump. Well, I can talk about President Trump. I can tell you that I think he was the right president at the right time. I don't think he's the right president now. I think that he put us $8 trillion in debt, and our kids are never going to forgive us for that. I think the fact that he used to be right on Ukraine and foreign issues, now he's getting weak in the knees and trying to be friendly again. I think that we've got to go back to the fact that we can't live in the past. We can't live in other headlines. We've got to start focusing on what's going to make America strong and proud. And that's what I'm focused on doing. Let's make sure we pay down our debt. I think we need an accountant in the White House. Let's make sure that we have transparency in the classroom. As a mom, I know what that means. Let's make sure we secure our borders so that our families are safe. Let's get crime down, because our families want to know that they can be safe no matter where they go. And as the wife of a combat veteran, I will tell you,
get the vet cards in.
Needs to
Always
know
get them in.
We have our back, and we need to make sure that America is strong.
Ambassador, thank you very much. And let me just caution the audience, let's not go down this road. We've asked you to please, keep restraining yourselves, and would be helpful so we can hear the candidates.
This is how strict they are as well. They're telling the fucking audience, don't applaud the candidates when they say shit you like. Like, why are they even there? That's not very American. I thought this was America.
It's because these are important issues, and the voters want and need to hear them. Mr. Ramaswamy, let me turn to you. Please
yes.
Make your case. Why would you...
Come on, Jimmy Neutron. What you got for us today?
The former president.
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, and we've got Christian Welker here, do you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, Christian, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real, or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Roberts.
This is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why you?
Yes.
Let's not do this.
Chaos.
Let's not do this. Let's let the candidates
Chaos.
speak.
Yeah, let's not do this.
Why you and not former President Trump?
Well, Lester, look, you said it at the beginning of the debate. We are dealing with extraordinarily important issues facing this country right now. We have our greatest ally in the Middle East under fire from a terrorist group that has committed to wiping them and every Jewish person in this world off the map.
He went there first. See? Christie is on his fucking game in this debate, by the way. It's his best performance, and he's not going to be in the next one. So, just saying. He finally stopped doing all the Jacob Marley, oh, Trump, does anyone remember Trump? And actually started talking about some shit just too late in the day. I mean, he never had a real chance anyway. As I've said, he looks like a child's drawing of greed. So he's never going to play well with voters, and he's got that unreal like front bussy. We've all seen the photos. He's got a front bussy out of nowhere, a gunt for the ages. You know, so it was never going to happen for him. It's fine, but he actually contributes in this debate. So
we have Ukraine with Vladimir Putin, a communist KGB dictator who wants to put the old band back together. He's starting in Ukraine, and he's going to move to the Baltics and Poland after that. We have inflation in this country that is choking every American family that wants to try to rise up and give their children a better life. And tonight, we need to decide which president is going to be the one to tackle the big issues, who's going to make this country look once again, not just inward, but look outward at the world. I'd say America is the country, the indispensable nation that makes this a safer world.
Yeah.
And in a safer world, American
It really depends on what country you live in. I do have to say, but I mean, theoretically, maybe. I don't know.
Innovation, American hard work has always been the thing that has driven our country to greater things. I'm going to be the president who will do those big things. We're not going to be small, and I'll say this about Donald Trump. Anybody who's going to be spending the next year and a half of their life focusing on keeping themselves out of jail and courtrooms cannot lead this party or this country,
right,
and it needs to be said plainly.
Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Senator Scott. Senator
Correct.
Scott, you've said former President Trump can't win. Make your case to Republican voters.
Well, certainly. What I would say without any question is that the truth of my life destroys the lies of the radical left. We need a president and a candidate who will actually help our base solidify and attract independent voters into our party. The Great Opportunity Party is now winning back African-American voters and Hispanic voters because we are working on a foundation based on faith. Our nation is facing some deep challenges. It is the loss of faith in this nation that is a part of the erosion that we're seeing every single day. It's restoring faith, restoring our Christian values that will help this nation once again become the city on the hill. When Ronald Reagan talked about the city on the hill, he was coming from Matthew 5. When President Lincoln talked about a house divided, that was Mark. Our founding documents speak to the importance of a faith foundation. You don't have to be a Christian for America to work for you, but America does not work without a faith-filled Judeo-Christian foundation. I would be the president that helps us restore faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our future. Without that focus, none of the issues, the policies matter. We have to get
Definitely
back to
100%
being a nation that is
that's Tim Scott's fucking platform in a nutshell. The policies don't matter. The issues totally do. Most important thing in a lot of ways. But no, they don't matter. It's fine. We're just gonna, without the Bible or something, none of this matters. Definitely does. Still does.
The city on the hill that believes in each other enough for us to fight
Scott,
for that future.
Senator Scott, thank you. We're going to turn now to the challenges facing the next commander-in-chief. You'll all be fielding questions first from me and the Republican Jewish Coalition, and then from Kristen and
breaking me, dude.
So
Look
as
how
we
far
continue
back it
forward,
starts.
the Israel-Hamas war is barely a month old. Tonight, Israeli troops are fighting inside Gaza City with over 200 hostages who remain captive there, and civilian casualties mount inside Gaza. As President of the United States, what would you be urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do at this?
Right, all Zoomers in the audience, I don't know, go and open that TikTok where your favorite influencer reads Bin Laden's letter to America. You're not going to like this. You're not going to like what any of these people have to say. So just go do that. You know, I saw a bunch of dances you can do to help liberate Palestine. You get right on that for the night and come back in 10 minutes.
Governor DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas. They're terrorists. They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe if they could. He cannot live with that threat right by his country. That Hamas should release every hostage and they should unconditionally surrender. I'm sick of hearing the media. I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for defending itself. We will stand with Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private. And I can tell you, as governor, I actually did something about it. Biden's neglect has been atrocious.
Yep, see, here it is.
That were over there after the attack. He left them stranded. They couldn't get flights out. So I scrambled resources in Florida. I sent planes over to Israel, and I brought back over 700 people to safety. There could have been more hostages had we not acted. And I'll tell you this, I met the first plane load when they came to Florida, and one of the mothers pointed to a 6-year-old daughter, and she said, my daughter had been saying the last 2 nights, Mommy, I don't want to hear any more bombs, no more rockets. I just want to get back to Florida. So there's a difference between words and deeds. We acted and we saved lives.
He actually cut that story short. That very real girl did say, I want to get back to Florida, the Sunshine State, which has been wholly improved by the incredible policies of Governor Ron DeSantis, who was actually genuinely 5'11". But obviously, you know, for the sake of brevity, he cut that out. And then everybody clapped.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, what would you do? What would you be urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do? Would you consider humanitarian pause, for example?
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them.
You're asking Nikki Haley. Like, I just can't even get this. Like, you can definitely skip Nikki Haley on this issue. You like 100% can skip Nikki Haley on this issue. It's like, it's so ridiculous. Like, I just can't handle it. I just can't handle it. We're going to literally ask Nikki Haley.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, what would you do? What would you be urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do? Would you consider humanitarian pause, for example?
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them.
Because she's a fucking Mortal Kombat character and not a serious politician. She's doing fatality moves.
Finish them. And the reason is I worked on this every day when I was at the United Nations. And we have to remember that they have to, 1, eliminate Hamas, 2, support Israel with whatever they need whenever they need it, and 3, make sure we bring our hostages home. We need to be very clear-eyed to know there would be no Hamas without Iran. There would be no Hezbollah without Iran. There would not be the Houthis without Iran. And there wouldn't be the Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq that are trying to hit our military men and women if it hadn't been for Iran. And who is funding Iran right now? China is buying oil from Iran. Russia is getting drones and missiles from Iran. And there is an unholy alliance. We need to be clear-eyed. The last thing we need to
America is also funding Iran.
do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel. They are the tip of the spear when it comes to this Islamic terrorism, and we need to make sure that we have their backs in that process.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy.
And the crowd love it, by the way. Now, listen, I've got my own theory on this. I reckon a lot of these are plants. You know, she's getting backed by the Cokes and all that stuff. But the crowd loving it. Yeah, another fucking Iran, another fucking forever war. Perfect. Let's sign me up for that shit. Because, by the way, there would never be a backlash against common people. I mean, if you keep attacking these Islamic countries, it's not like there's going to be a rise in radical Islamic retaliation, is there? That wouldn't happen. You know, it's not a fucking the ultimate recruitment drive every time you fucking do this. But yeah, definitely do it with Iran this time. Totally. I mean, keep in mind, what I find maddening is if you're so jacked up on the idea of going to war with Iran, right? Because Iran is dangerous. And it's true, they do funnel their money into Hamas and everything else. I've talked about that previously. You know, it's why the Biden administration just sort of handing over that $6 billion and letting the Qataris, like, hold on to it at this particular time, after they just left a ton of military ordnance in Afghanistan as well, which, yes, did show up in Palestine. I think probably they've kind of, like, fumbled the ball a bit there. But I'll also just add, when the Iranian people were rising up against, and it's still going on, like, there should be blanket media coverage about this, but there isn't, after that morality police killing. So they rose up against the state, and they were being completely, suppressed by their tyrannical, theocratic regime. Why didn't America help the Iranian people overthrow the government? You've done it before, America, pretty good at that, actually. But not only did you not do that, your media aren't even covering it at all, despite a number of high-profile Iranian sports stars and stuff having been, imprisoned and all of it. It's fucking crazy to me. But okay, now what we'll do is we'll just go to war with them instead. That'll solve it. Rapturous applause.
Between you and the candidates we just heard in this issue, on what you would tell the Prime Minister?
Not in terms of what I would tell the Prime Minister, no. In fact, I would go one step further. The founding vision of Israel was based on the idea that they don't want to depend on anybody else's sympathy or direction in defending themselves. So what I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as President of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border.
He's smoking the terrorists. Right. Now, I'll just add, even in the debate cycle, Vivek did say he wants to cut off aid to Israel as well. Did say that on multiple occasions. Said he wants Israel to be financially independent, and as president, he would unhook Israel from American aid. Which, but now he's saying, listen, we're with you. You smoke them terrorists. I'm going to smoke a terrorist. We'll all smoke a terrorist.
This is our responsibility. That's how we move forward. But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Corrupt politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
That's fucking, that's straight fire, spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves. That is fire.
Fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. And Joe Biden sold off our foreign policy. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. That's why we're sending $200 billion back to that same country. The fact of the matter is the Republican Party is not that much better. You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a multimillionaire.
It was Boeing, not Lockheed.
Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first, or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case, we've got two of them on stage tonight.
Ramaswamy, thank you.
And by the way, that's the best fucking line of the debate, and the fucking crowd oh, they did super hot fire over it. Whoa! Because they thought it was just Nikki Haley when he said Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, but then he went, but we got two of them, which of course is referring to this ongoing cover. I don't know if you've seen this conspiracy theory. Let me just get you actually a picture of it. There's been much talk about DeSantis and whether or not he's using heels, as in he's got things in his boots to make him look taller, because he's actually a manlet. And you can see here, someone has drawn an outline. There was a ton of diagrams and stuff being drawn about where the fucking heels and because he walks with such an odd gait, they're you see, he's always on tiptoes. And look how floppy the end of the shoe is. His toes aren't in there. There's no. So this is the thing about DeSantis' heels. It's fucking crazy. And there's even an article on Politico, which you can go and look up. And it's 3 expert shoemakers say Ron DeSantis is probably wearing height boosters. American politics. Doesn't it make you so proud?
Senator Scott,
Yes.
Senator, same question to you about you're the president, you're on the phone in the Oval Office with the Prime Minister, you tell him what?
Well, number one, I would tell Prime Minister Netanyahu, not only do you have the responsibility.
Watch him just like, because he's out of his depth there. He doesn't really know what's going on with policy in the Middle East. That's not a Tim Scott question. So,
The right to wipe Hamas off of the map. We will support you. We will be there with you. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder. There will be no daylight. But I would change the station a little bit, though, and head back home to America. I would say to President Biden, diplomacy only is a weak strategy. Appeasement leads to war. From President Obama to President Biden, Obama sent millions to Iran. Frankly, President Biden has sent billions to Iran. That is why I've said that there's blood dripping from the hands of President Obama and President Biden. I would tell President Biden with great clarity, if you want to stop the 40-plus attacks on military personnel in the Middle East, you have to strike in Iran. If you want to make a difference, you
literally just amalgamated everyone's answers.
In Syria on warehouses, you actually have to cut off the head of the snake, and the head of the snake is Iran and not simply their proxies. In order for us to have a powerful response
Again,
from America, we
the
have
coke
to
plants,
be in a
yes.
position of strength. As President of the United States, my foreign policy is simple. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to destroy it.
Just not the American brand of evil. we definitely negotiate with that, and actually definitely don't destroy it. In fact, it's not evil. It's great. It's fantastic. Good point.
All right, Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, I want to get you to weigh in here.
Look, Lester, these problems are so big and serious that the first thing I would say to
Nearly as big as his gun.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is pretty simple. America is here, no matter what it is you need at any time, to preserve the state of Israel. Remember that Hamas's main goal is to get rid of Israel, is to get Israel absolutely off the map. Now, there are three things I think I would say to him when he asked for advice. The first I would say is that it is absolutely your obligation to protect the territorial integrity of Israel. Secondly, to make sure you protect the security and the safety of your people. Every time something happens to compromise either one of those things, it creates greater unrest in the entire region. Second, you must go in and make sure that Hamas can never do this again. The fact is that Israel and their intelligence community failed. They failed here, and they failed the people of the state of Israel. And so we need to work closely and better together to make sure, one, that they're degraded, and two, that we know everything that's going on inside the Gaza Strip when it's going on, so that something like this can't happen to kill 1,400 individuals again. And the third thing is to keep your eye on the ball. Make sure that we continue to isolate Iran, work with the reasonable nations in the Middle East, the other Arab nations who want to partner with you, and make sure that we continue to isolate Iran so that their only friends in the world are the part of the evil foursome: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
Governor Christie, thank you very much. And we're going to continue in this vein right now with a question from Matthew Brooks, the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition, a partner of the Republican National Committee in this debate. Here it is.
Hey, Pistol, please stop lifting your chin when you're presenting a specific...
Given attacks by Iranian-backed proxy groups on U.S. military bases in Syria and Iraq, attacks that have wounded approximately 24 of our U.S. servicemen, do you support the use of military force by the United States against Iran?
Now, again, like, dude, we just talked about this. Like, they've literally all said, oh, yeah, we'd love a war with Iran. Like, now, it's like, we're so ramping this shit up. It's like, I don't know, guys. Like, can we solve the Ukraine thing and maybe the Israel-Hamas thing first? Like, just probably a good idea. Like, we think we've got enough going on. So, but no, we have brought on a special guest to ask you, hi there. Will you take military action against Iran?
Haley, would you please answer that?
Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch.
Nick, oh God, yes, she replies to the fucking heels joke. I forgot about this. But yeah, Nikki Haley, will you kill everyone?
Of our U.S. servicemen. Do you support the use of military force by the United States
She's like
against
jumping
Iran?
out.
Governor Haley, would you please answer that?
Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
We've got two of you on stage.
The second thing that I will say is I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition. What we need to be doing for Iraq and Syria is, first of all, the idea that our men and women could be targeted and that we've allowed almost 100 hits to happen under Biden's watch is unthinkable. We need to understand this is Iran giving the green light, telling them what to do, and we shouldn't be doing the tit for tat.
That's how murderous she is. Even her shoes are guns.
Like what Joe Biden has done. About? We need to go and take out their infrastructure that they are using to make those strikes with so they can never do it again. Iran responds to strength. You punch them one and you punch them hard and they will back off. But what we don't...
I'll remind you about another country that thought the one punch, one hard punch will end all of our problems with that nation. There was a little nation called Japan. And, when they got involved in that World War II, they were like, listen, reckon we'll, if we just bomb the shit out of that Pearl Harbor place, like, we hit them once, and they'll respect that. America will respect that. So, no, it doesn't work like that, Nikki, but okay, fine. Iran respects strength. If you punch them, they'll be like, oh, yeah, good punch, mate. Yeah, nice one. Yeah.
Don't need is Biden falling all over himself to get back in the Iran deal. Him giving $6 billion to get 5 hostages home. Him telling Netanyahu now that he needs a pause or a ceasefire. We don't need him going and sitting there tiptoeing around Iran because he thinks they're going to do something. You don't respond to an enemy and a terrorist with fear. You respond with strength. When you do that, that's when the world pays attention, and that's when Iran stops.
Thank you. Governor DeSantis, if I can continue with you.
Like, how's Iran just gonna... It's not just gonna stop, is it? I mean, what the fuck are you talking about? Like...
Just today, the U.S. launched another one of its limited airstrikes against targets in Syria, this time Iranian-linked facility. How far would you go militarily to hold... Here he goes. He's look at him. He's got the lizard eyes. He's got the fucking snake eyes on. Here he goes. He's got. You can see it. It's all coming up. It's like I'm a veteran. Yeah, I really was. I wasn't just a lawyer. I wasn't just a jag. I wasn't just a naval lawyer. But here I go. I'm about to get real evil. We're gonna talk about military stuff and killing and death. And yeah, I'm a mean, tough guy. Iran accountable.
Well, first, Matt, thanks for your question, and I appreciate what you've done over the last month. I know it's been very difficult for the community, and appreciate you guys rallying together in difficult times. I actually served in Iraq back in the day, and
I gotta say as well, like, listen, I get it. Like, technically, he's telling the truth. Like, you know, he went to Guantanamo. He was out in Iraq. But I almost feel like every time he talks about being a vet, it does sort of give me stolen valor vibes. Like, I can't imagine it plays particularly well with the military. I doubt that it does. I don't know. I mean, I've seen no part. It's just a gut feeling. Because, it's like saying that you're a veteran. I know he's not specifying a combat veteran, but no one is saying thanks for your service to a fucking lawyer. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I never liked it. I don't think he should lean into it as much as he does, but whatever.
We had Al-Qaeda in Iraq. You had Shia militias that were funded by Iran that were killing hundreds and hundreds of U.S. troops. And as commander-in-chief, I am not going to put our troops in harm's way unless you're willing to defend them with everything you have. Biden has them out there. They're sitting ducks. He's doing glancing blows. That's just inviting more attacks from the Iranians. I would say you harm a hair on the head of an American service member, and you are going to have hell to pay. We are not just going to sit there and let our service members be sitting ducks, and that's true whether it's Iran or whether it's any country on the world. We have to be strong, and we have to defend the people who defend us.
All right, thank you, Governor. Now our second and final question from Matthew Brooks of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Please watch.
Jewish
Would you invade Iran?
students across the country are threatened and under attack. What do you say to Jewish students on college campuses who feel unsafe given the dramatic rise in anti-Semitism? And what do you say to university presidents and college presidents who have not met the moral clarity moment to forcefully condemn Hamas terrorism?
Mr. Ramaswamy, would you like to take that one?
Absolutely. I think the scourge of anti-Semitism across this country, including at places like my alma maters and places like Brooklyn Bridge in New York, it's sad to see, but here's what history teaches us. Anti-Semitism is a symptom of a deeper cancer in a country and a society that is lost, and we are lost. Several years ago, when I wrote my first book, Woke Inc., I was talking about they were chanting death to America, death to white people, death to Christians. Nobody was waking up back then. Now it's even bad. Now they're saying death to Israel and worse. So it is wrong, but we have to get to the root cause here. Now, I think it's really important that we do this through leadership, not censorship. Leadership means fill that void with purpose and meaning. Dilute this wokeism and anti-Semitism to irrelevance. These kids, they have no idea what the heck they're even talking about when they're siding with Hamas over Israel. They are fools. But I also want to caution here, if we go the direction of Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, with whom I respectfully disagree on this issue, pro-censorship, telling student groups to disband, mark my words, soon they will say if you question a vaccine and its side effects, you're a bioterrorist. Soon they will say that if you show up at a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist. Soon if they say that J6 prisoners should be released, you're an insurrectionist terrorist. So that's where this road ends. We don't quash this with censorship because that creates a worse underbelly. We quell it through leadership by calling it out. These university administrators have lost their way, and we need leadership at the top in the United States of America that restores our founding values and that has no place for this kind of anti-Semitic hate.
So, just in case you don't know what he's talking about, you know, because you might not have followed the news, at several campuses, there were a number of pro-Hamas, which is, I'm just calling them pro-Hamas. I'm not even going to split hairs with anyone at this point, you know, like, no, they're pro-Palestine, or they're anti-Israel. No, a number of pro-Hamas rallies where basically there was a few instances where Jewish students were threatened, and so what the faculties had to do was either call the police to get them off campus with an escort, or they offered to like lock them in the library, which again, optically, the idea of like, oh, there's some people threatening you outside, Jewish person, come in, I will hide you in an attic or something. It's like, again, guys, I don't know if you fucking might want to just look into it. Maybe you're a history buff. You might have read like a period of history where this was going on and it was pretty bad. So, you know, that actually happened. You can go up and go. That's what Vivek's talking about here. But the pushback for that was there were a number of wealthy donors that said, I want to know who these like students are that are saying these anti-Semitic things and going on a pro-Hamas rally, because I'm going to tell all of my colleagues, do not hire these people into leadership positions, because obviously, you know, they're aligned with a terrorist organization and are anti-Semitic. And then that went into somebody hired a truck, like it was South Korean esports, and the truck would drive around the neighborhood with their photos and names on it, saying, you know, that they support Hamas and hate Jews. That has then also led into now people are wanting to, as DeSantis has said, penalize these people for expressing these viewpoints. And DeSantis is saying, if, for example, if you're a foreign student and you come to an American university and you express pro-Hamas sentiment, we will take away your visa and deport you. And so I gotta say, I don't, you know me, I don't support that. I definitely don't support the promotion of radical terrorist viewpoints, but equally, I think at university you are going to be exposed to a number of views, and you should be able to express views and work things through without sort of being penalized in a manner that can impact on the rest of your life. And certainly the idea of deporting someone for being involved in a pro-Hamas march, I mean, you know, It seems a bit much to me. So that's what Vivek's talking about with the censorship thing. There was an interesting argument in the chudosphere that was going on. Some rightoids were saying, yeah, obviously, boots on the other foot now, leftards, lol, yeah. And then, other people were going, but isn't this cancel culture? I thought you didn't like that stuff. No, actually, it's not cancel culture, because the thing they're saying this time hurts my feelings. So, there was like this ridiculous kind of, discussion that was going on. And by the way, the idea that the right doesn't engage in cancel culture is, of course, a complete fabrication, because the right in America do engage in cancel culture. We saw this with, Dylan Mulvaney, gets a beer can with her face on it. And we'll never drink, but it's poison, I tell thee. I mean, you shouldn't be drinking that piss anyway, because it's a fucking bad beer. So the rightoids are up in fucking cancel culture all the time. And that's kind of what Vivek's talking about. They wanted to cancel a bunch of students for being pro-Hamas.
That's where I stand while respecting our Constitution.
Your time is out. Senator Scott, let me get you to weigh in on what you just heard.
Well, let me just say to every single university president in America, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. Number one. Number two, to every student who've come to our country on a visa to a college campus, your visa is a privilege, not a right. Number three, any campus that allows for anti-Semitism and hate, to allow students to encourage terrorism, mass murder, and genocide, you should lose your federal funding today, period. To all the students on visas who are encouraging Jewish genocide, I would deport you from those campuses. We have to stand strong with our Jewish Americans. At the end of the day, we should not have our Jewish students in a library being told to hide.
I mean, I'll just repeat it again, people. The optics of that story is fucking bonkers. Like, I still can't believe it happened, where a university faculty said, well, we thought we dealt with the situation well because we invited the Jews to hide while a baying mob threatening to kill Jews paraded around looking for the Jews. Like, I can't believe that's where we're at. And the mad part is, if you go online and you try and engage with any of this, the mob hunting down the Jewish people are the good guys this time. They're in the majority. All the kids are like, yeah, I see no problem with it. Have you seen what Israel are doing? Look at this map. Watch as it gets progressively whiter as opposed to greener. It's like, yeah, there's some historical context behind some of that. It's ridiculous. Like, I've never seen, I never thought I would see just open anti-Semitism to that degree in America. And I was genuinely shocked by it in October, but by November, it's almost become blasé. It's everywhere. Like, it's fucking insane.
On our streets in New York, a Jewish citizen has the right to walk on the streets of America with no fear. They have the right to go to college campuses, go to class, and not fear. We will restore that. I started working on anti-Semitism on college campuses in 2017 because even then there was a rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. We must
which the media blame Trump for.
People off those campuses, and
Senator
frankly,
Scott, thank you. Let me
out of our country.
Let me turn to the Governor DeSantis here. What do you think about what he just said?
I was the first presidential candidate to say, if you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making...
Yeah. Tim did eat your homework there a bit. He did crib it.
Common cause with Hamas. I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked. Second, I have friends here in Florida who their kids do not feel safe even going to university campus at all outside of the state of Florida. You have Jewish students fleeing for their lives at Cooper Union. Joe Biden should have the Department of Justice on these college campuses and holding the universities accountable for civil rights violations. When you should not have money going to these places. I already acted in Florida. We had a group, Students for Justice of Palestine. They said they are common cause with Hamas. They said, we're not just in solidarity, this is what we are. We deactivated them. We're not going to use state tax dollars to fund jihad. No way. And what is Biden doing? Not only is he not helping the Jewish students who are being persecuted, he is launching an initiative to combat so-called Islamophobia. No, it's the anti-Semitism that's spiraling out of control. Right. That is what we have to confront. And as president, I can tell you this, we are not going to stand for this on college campuses any longer.
All right, Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Governor Christie. And considering what he just said, you led a state with a sizable Muslim population. Last month, as you know, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy was killed in Illinois by his landlord. His mother was also stabbed more than a dozen times in what has been charged as a hate crime. What do you say to Muslim Americans who are also feeling afraid for their safety right now?
Lester, I'm the only one on the stage who's actually had experience in dealing with this. I was appointed by President Bush to be the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. And when I took over,
fuck off, Chris. Listen, I just want to let you know that when it comes to dealing with an uptick in Islamophobia, I got the job. September 10th it was. There was a... Yep, never forgetty. Fuck me, dude. He's straight in. This is what I mean, though. By the way, this obviously it plays perfectly. It's a shame he's left all this stuff too late. Like, you know what I mean?
Go over that job after the September 11th attacks. I had to deal with a situation in our state that was explosive. We're the most ethical.
Come on, bro. Reel it in.
Diverse state in this country. And so first, we heard credible reports about Jewish students and synagogues being threatened in our state in the aftermath of 9/11. We made sure that we sent...
But bizarrely, I know that's actually true. Because, so, it was a strange time. No one was safe after 9/11. Everybody lost their fucking mind because the terrorist attack happened on American soil. And there were obviously a lot of people that, like, there was even very quickly in the aftermath of the attack, there were people peddling this idea that, like, you know, that it was a Jewish conspiracy. And so synagogues did get attacked after September the 11th. And obviously mosques did as well, quite significantly. In fact, where I lived in the time at Wales, like, just, you know, the fucking Shire, there was an attack on a mosque not far from where I lived. Like, people went, like, it's Wales, guys. Like, yeah, it was fucking crazy. Like, you know, the aftermath was just insane. And all the bullshit and misinformation that was going around. It's just as well, I have to say, it's just as well it was very early internet. Because if it was like it is now, then it would have been a nightmare. I can't even tell you how bad it would have been with all the bullshit.
Federal agents to those synagogues, and we protected them, and the same thing should be being done now. At the very same time, I personally went from mosque to mosque in New Jersey and met with the leaders of those mosques and with the members of the mosques. And I said to them, law enforcement is on your side to protect you, regardless of your religion, if you are going to comply with the law. And we developed fabulous relationships with Muslim Americans all across the state of New Jersey, and we stopped any hate crimes that were going on either against Jewish Americans in New Jersey or Muslim Americans in New Jersey. It takes leadership, Lester, to know how to do this. You must work with both sides. Both sides need to know it, but let us never have a false moral equivalence between Hamas and Hezbollah and the Jewish people. The Jewish people stand for right and justice, and Hamas and Hezbollah stand for death.
Senator Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley, what do you say to Americans who are simply afraid right now in this current environment that we're talking about?
I think, you look at the country, and the country is all out of sorts. I think, look at what these kids are dealing with on college campuses. What makes me so angry is not only do you have the kids barricaded in the library, they've said they were going to shoot up the kosher dining hall. You've got kids' dorm rooms who are being set on fire because they have something related to Israel on their doors. No person should ever feel in danger like this. And this is what I would say about our college presidents.
I'm coming for you with missiles and Raytheon technology, and you will be destroyed.
Is if the KKK were doing this,
Hang on a minute, let me just... Yeah, I wondered what fucking energy she was giving off. That's what it was. It's been bugging me the whole time. Yeah, she's been giving me Borg Queen energy. I couldn't put my finger on it. The mannerisms, the icy cold stare, but that's it, man. She on that fucking Borg Queen shit. I even got the pose, she's ready. You will be assimilated. Campuses, all of you will be assimilated.
College president would be up in arms. This is no different. You should treat it exactly the same. Anti-Semitism is just as awful as racism, and we've got to make sure they're protected. And for everybody that's protesting on these college campuses in favor of Hamas, let me remind you something. Hamas said death to Israel and death to America. They hate and would kill you too. And the idea that they're talking about...
Spoiler, the students that are out marching on the pro-Hamas rallies hate America too. I don't know. I know it seems strange because they live there and enjoy an incredibly privileged life because they do. But no, they hate America, and they all secretly chuckle about 9/11. This is what they don't want. This is what they don't want to tell you, but it's true. They can't help themselves. They think your favorite streamer has even said it on Twitch. They think that's just par for the course. America had that coming. That's literally what they believe. So, you're not surprising them when you say Hamas hates America because, yeah, they hate America too. They really do.
Genocide for the Jewish people, that's not the values of America. That's not us. We're better than that. We don't need to celebrate terrorists. We don't need to celebrate genocide. We don't need to celebrate violence towards anybody. We need to...
and probably a few anniversaries that you could reinterpret as celebrating genocide. I don't know. Can you think of any? Genocides in American history? Oh, it's fine.
To go back and soul search in our country and remember what we are about. And we are about taking care of people, not going and making them live in fear because some other terrorist activity says they want to destroy them.
Ambassador, thank you. Kristen.
Lester, thank you. This is another question for the entire field, so you will all get a chance to respond. But Senator Scott, I'd like to start with you.
Why?
The United States has given Ukraine financial and military support
right,
since
Jace.
the war began.
Go to the park.
600 days ago.
Get out there.
President Zelensky told me on Sunday, if Russia isn't stopped now, quote, the price will be higher for the United States, and Americans would be forced to, quote, send your sons and daughters to defend NATO countries. Senator Scott, where do you stand on more funding for Ukraine?
Well, I'm going first, so let me tell you about this little book called the Bible. No, I don't know.
I certainly have been very supportive of Ukraine. I believe that ultimately we should make sure that the President of the United States states what is America's national vital interest in Ukraine. It is actually in degrading the Russian military. We've been very effective using our resources and our weaponry and the incredibly high price of Ukrainian blood to achieve that objective. Every day we get closer to the degradation of the Russian military, and that's good news. But the American people are frustrated that they do not have a president who reminds us and tells us, where's the accountability? Where are those dollars? How are those dollars being spent? We need those answers for us to continue to see the support for Ukraine. And at the same time, I would say that a package that's been offered by the president for Ukraine and Israel, that's the wrong approach. We need to focus specifically on providing Israel with the $14 billion that they need so that we show the world that we are 100% undeniably standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. And then as we turn away from that direct support for Israel, we should go to our southern border and close our southern border with the resources necessary. I believe that we have sleeper terrorist cells in America. Thousands of people have come from Yemen, Iran, Syria, and Iraq. If we are going to deal with the national security emergency at our border, we have to do.
By those sleeper cells, Vorsh fans. So I don't know, dude. Like, yeah, okay. The question was about Ukraine, though.
Now,
Senator Scott, thank you. But just to be very clear, if you were president, if you were in the Oval Office today, would you sign off on more military funding for Ukraine, or would you discontinue it?
Bottom line is we have to first have the level of accountability that allows the American people to understand where the resources have gone. Number one. Number two, after we have that responsibility taken care of it.
It's a little bit disingenuous to sort of call for this because, first of all, there is an accounting on the official White House website of how much money has been sent to Ukraine. I know everyone was memeing on it because they were like, oh, an error. We've given $6 billion too much. And the problem is you're never going to get a complete breakdown of like what it was spent on. Coming out of Ukraine, you know, like Zelensky's not going to be like, oh, and we got some paper clips on Monday, filled up the printer toner, javelin. You know, it's never going to go like that, right? Like, I mean, you know, and I'm sure, by the way, because this always is the case, whenever you start pumping money and equipment into, you know, a country that's essentially fighting a fucking proxy war for you, there's corruption, there's wastage, there's loss, there's self-enrichment, there's all of those things. Those things were going on in the Ukraine before any of this bullshit, so it shouldn't fucking be a surprise to anyone. So you're either in or you're out. You know, the idea that the American taxpayer is like, oh, well, now that I see that they've spent it on plutonium tracer ammunition, I am fine with my... You're either in or you're out. You're either in or you're out on this particular issue, right? You know, it's just where it is. Like,
with accountability, then we have an opportunity to look at the overall strategy that helps us degrade the Russian military while we use our resources, and frankly, keeping our NATO partners safe from the Russian military is absolutely essential. As you understand, Article 5 would require to support and to defend NATO.
Just as well Ukraine isn't in NATO, then, isn't it?
The fastest way for us to eliminate that possibility is for us to destroy, to the extent possible, the Russian military. By doing so, we actually achieve the objective of keeping our military home. And that's good news.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Mr. Ramaswamy, are you persuaded by President Zelensky's urgent
right, buckle up. Buckle up.
New plea? Where do you stand on more funding?
I'm absolutely unpersuaded. And I'm actually enjoying watching the Ukraine hawks quietly, delicately tiptoe back from their position as this thing has unwound into a disaster. The first half of this race, I was the only person standing for it. Now they're actually quietly coming around to being more cautious, as they should. Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It has consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. That's not democratic. It has threatened not to hold elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That is not democratic. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic. More facts for you that you won't hear from the mainstream in either party or the mainstream media. The regions of Ukraine that are occupied by Russia right now, in the Donbass, Luhansk, Donetsk. These are Russian-speaking regions that have not even been part of Ukraine since 2014, that other people probably couldn't name those provinces for you. Those are the hard facts. And so to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it. And I'd like the likes of the sharpest of the war hawks on Ukraine, Nikki Haley, to have some accountability and answer. Do you want to use U.S. taxpayer money to fund the banning of Christians? That is actually what's happening. They're using the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They have banned them. The Ukrainian parliament just did this last week, supported by our dollars. And I think you owe it to the American people, Nikki, to at least this one time at least condemn.
Thank you. That's time.
At least to
Mr.
condemn
Ramaswamy,
their banning of Christians.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
or else
thank
we're
you.
talking out of both sides
Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. We asked the questions. Ambassador Haley,
well, she deserves to
what
answer.
is your take on more funding for Ukraine?
The drums of war, the drums of war. Nikki Haley's coming with the drums of war.
I am telling you, Putin and President Xi are salivating at the thought that someone like that could become president. They would love to see
The fact of the matter is she doesn't answer
So
the
this is
question.
what I will tell you.
We're driving
First
Russia
of all,
into
let's
China's
remember-
hands
Ramaswamy,
because of
you
these
had
foolish
your time
policies.
to talk. The ambassador has the floor.
Thank
Ambassador,
you. The
please.
first thing I'll tell you is we all remember what that thug did when he invaded Ukraine. We all know that 500,000 people have died because of Putin. And here is a freedom-loving, pro-American country that is fighting for its survival and its democracy. No, I don't think we should give them cash. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. And I'll tell you, if Biden had done it when they first asked for it, this war would be over. But let's also remember this. When you
Narrator,
left
it would not be
Afghanistan
over.
in shambles and left them with a ton of weapons and money, it's not that we left, it's how we left. When you look at Ukraine, don't think for a second, now everybody wants to move away from Ukraine. They'll want to move away from Israel a year from now. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. Now is the time to get partnerships. This unholy alliance between Russia, Ukraine, and China is real. There is a reason the Taiwanese want us to support the Ukrainians. It's because they know that China's coming after them next. There is
Pretty
a
sure
reason
she meant Iran
Ukrainians
there, but
want us
whatever.
to support Israelis because they know that if Iran
Slay
wins,
queen.
Russia wins.
Ambassador.
Slay.
To see the combination of the three.
She's slaying.
Thank you.
She's
Governor
slaying.
Christie, what is your take, and how long should Americans be expected to help fund the war in Ukraine?
Kirsten, let's remember the last time that we turned our back on a shooting war in Europe. It bought us just a couple of years. And then 500,000 Americans were killed in Europe to defeat Hitler. This is not a choice.
Is it all the big anniversaries? This one, he's done 9/11, he's doing World War II. He's got it all. He knows. He knows history.
This is the price we pay for being the leaders of the free world. And the fact is, this alliance is not just with Russia and China. Governor Haley knows this. Iran is in the middle of this as well, and so is North Korea. And they are all working to support Russia right now. And the reason they're doing it is because dictators work together. People who believe in democracy work together.
The people, those people known for the cooperative spirit, dictators. Yeah, okay. All right, mate. It's all right. He's on a roll. He's on a roll.
With all of those that are standing up for democracy and freedom in this world. And by the way, let's remind everybody of this. In 1992, this country made a promise to Ukraine. We said if you return nuclear missiles that were part of the old Soviet Union to Russia and they invade you, we will protect you. An American promise that's 31 years old is no different than an American promise that's made tonight on this stage. We need to stand by it. And those of us who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And
I'd like to respond.
And the absolute giving in to dictators, which is being suggested on this stage, just shows the immaturity of the approach.
I'd like to
Governor
respond.
Christie, thank you.
Do seem to recall some promises being made to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 80s, but it's all right.
Governor DeSantis, I'd like you to weigh in on this idea. Are you concerned that this could become a wider war if Putin is not stopped now?
Well, any suggestion by Zelensky or anyone else that we're going to eventually have U.S. troops there, I can tell the American people when I'm president that will not happen. We are not going to send your sons and daughters to Ukraine. I am going to send troops to our southern border. If you look at the threats that we face, Terrorists have come in through our southern border. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to have the military, and I'm going to deport the people who've come, particularly under Biden, who've come from the Middle East, come from all these places. Now, Biden wants $105 billion. 60, most of that's Ukraine, including some of it going to pay pensions for bureaucrats and salaries. That is a totally ridiculous use of American tax dollars. He says he has money for border to try to do, and the media repeat that. When you look at it, what most of them...
By the way, since we've been doing lookalikes, this one's easy, but he really can't help. He really can't help this one. If you've not read the great comic Transmetropolitan, you definitely should. He just really will never beat the Smiler allegations. Like, it's just too it's just too real. Just too real, dude. Like, actually insane. It just is him. So it's only fair we do lookalikes for all the candidates.
Money is money to process more illegal aliens into this country. How is that solving the problem? That's making the problem worse. And what does he do for the Indo-Pacific? A pittance. That is the top threat that we face. We need to bring this war to an end. We need the Europeans to step up and do their fair share. And we need to get serious about the top threat that this country faces, which is the Chinese Communist Party.
So if I may respond to the Ukraine question.
In fact, we are going to go from the hot wars in Ukraine and Gaza and Israel to what many people are calling the new Cold War with China. And I remind the audience that it's important for our visitors at home to be able to hear you, and especially for the people in Beijing to hear you.
I don't want to say it. I can't say it. Does anyone know who this guy is? Because he's just given me Bethesda NPC vibes with the way like he's talking. So I just don't want to say anything in case. Look, I've been super unlucky with this in the past, you know. Made a joke about ex-Taz. Oh, he's got alopecia, actually, Richard. I had to apologise. I'm a bit gun-shy. See, people in the chat. People in the chat know. It is, isn't it? It is. Whatever.
Many Republicans believe that the Chinese...
Because it's going to turn out he is.
General Secretary Xi is an existential threat to the United States. The flashpoint is Taiwan. For decades and decades, the American military, but primarily the United States Navy, has deterred an attack from China to the island state of Taiwan. But Ronald Reagan's Navy of 600 ships is gone. Now, the question to you is, and I'll start with you, Ambassador Haley, because you were in President Trump's cabinet. His goal was a 355-ship Navy. That's what he pushed for. He got to 300. It's now at 291. Is that big enough to deter and, if necessary, defeat an invasion of Taiwan?
China has the largest naval fleet in the world. They have 350 ships. They'll have 400 ships in 2 years. We won't even have 350 ships in 2 decades. China has built up their military. It's not just land, air, and sea. They're doing cyber. They're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing space. America needs to modernize.
Thought she was getting... That's how broken my brain is. Like, they're doing cyber. They're doing anal. I don't even know why that popped in there. Weird.
It's our military.
Whatever.
We need to do everything we can. The first thing is you go and you make sure you have the backs of Ukraine. That's why the Taiwanese want us to support Ukraine, because they know that sends the biggest message to China. The second thing is we go to China and we start being tough on them. No more sales of our American soil to China, and let's take back what they've already stolen. Then you go and to the universities. No more having millions of dollars go to our universities. Then we will go and end all formal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans from fentanyl, something Ron has yet to say that he's going to do. And then we modernize our military. When we strengthen our military, when we modernize it with the focus of cyber, artificial intelligence, and space.
Spoiler, China would just not give a solitary fuck about any of this.
In Israel, whether it's in Ukraine, and we should be arming Taiwan. Make sure they have the equipment they need. Make sure they have the training they need now. There's nothing...
I love our answer to everything as a, formerly on a board of a military company. We just got to sell them the weapons. It's fine. Just sell them the weapons.
China fears more than knowing that America will have Taiwan's back. Let's make sure that we show it by making sure they have the equipment they need.
Governor DeSantis, my question is specifically about the Navy. It's at 291. It's going to go down perhaps as low as 280. Is it enough? And what would you build if you were going to build more?
Got the snake eyes again.
We have to have the ability to back up a strategy of denial of President Xi's ambitions. And if China is able to be the world's leading superpower, that will affect you and your family in ways that are going to be very bad. They will export authoritarianism all around the world as the cost of doing business. They will impose things like social credit scores and internet monitoring. So this is
not like the American government, which have soft social credit scores called credit scores, and now it's routine to monitor your social media. FBI searches through the roof illegally over people posting things like, I think Joe Biden smells. But yeah, okay, all right. Would never happen in
to
a
this
freedom-loving
generation what
country.
the Soviet Union was to the post-World War II generation. I've already released a plan. We're going to get to 355 ships at the end of the first term, 385 ships at the end of the second term, but we're going to have a path to 600 ships over the next 20 years. I think the future of freedom is going to be determined in the Indo-Pacific. We have a strategy not just military, but decoupling from the economy and fighting them here at home with their cultural. You know, Ambassador Haley said somehow I wasn't doing. She welcomed them into South Carolina.
Oh, yeah,
them
this is
land
good.
near a military base, wrote the Chinese ambassador a love letter saying what a great friend they were. That
Did
was
do
like
this.
their number one way to do economic development. In Florida, I banned China from buying land in this state, and we
Did
kicked
too.
out on our universities, and we kicked the Confucius Institutes out of our universities. We've recognized the threat, and we've acted swiftly and decisively.
Senator Scott, you've been in the Congress since 2011. Defense spending has fallen over that entire period of time. Where are we going to get the money, and what would you build, and what kind of ships to deter China from attacking Taiwan?
Well, two major problems with the question. Number one, we do not have currently a defense industrial bank to allow us to have the kind of production that we need in order to keep America safe. Frankly, if we are not prepared to fight and engage in 3 continents at the same time, think about where we are today. In the Middle East, we are in the midst of trying to back our strongest ally. In Eastern Europe, we've seen our resources and our weaponry help degrade the Russian military. The Indo-Pacific, we have real challenges. The long-term threat is China. Immediate threat is our southern border. In order for us to have the military to fight 3 different continents at the exact same time, we are going to have to invest heavily in our military, but we're also going to have to invest heavily in an industrial base so that we can hit our objectives from a military perspective, not only with our ships, but also with our planes. We are so old as a military that in order for us to recalibrate, we're going to have to invest. One of the things I do in my Made in America strategy is we create more than 4 million new jobs by having high-tech manufacturing come back to America, decoupling from China, so that we focus our attention on creating that industrial revolution that will be necessary for us to achieve the goal of having a military that is ready to be lethal and come home safe.
Senator.
Sounds pretty fucking rad. His entire strategy to create jobs is, what if we just stop making things in China because we'd like to go to war with China, or at least fight a proxy war against China through the defense of Taiwan? And what we'll do is we'll create 4 million jobs, all of them in military factories, making insane weapons. Wicked. Nailed it. Got it.
Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm looking for specifics. What would you build? Where would you build it? When would they be in the water? How big would the fleet get?
First answer is end the toxic divest to invest program. For people who don't know about that, we're decommissioning ships in the South China Sea. The foundation of war is economics. Rebuild our defense industrial base at home. But here's the dirty little secret. Our actual defense industrial base depends on China for the supply chain, for the F-35 jets, for the ships that we're building. Think about this. Why are we stockpiling that if it isn't to actually be strong against our enemy, China? We depend on them for that, just like we depend on them for pharmaceuticals, just like we depend on them for semiconductors. So here's why we can't get tough with China. It's because we depend on them for our modern way of life, and we have to declare economic independence from our enemy. That's the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson, at the age of 33, would have signed. Today, if he were alive, that's the Declaration of Independence
I'm young, y'all.
I will sign as the next president. I do have to recognize that Ron DeSantis was correct about acknowledging Nikki Haley's tough talk when she was ambassador to the UN, calling China our great friend, bringing the CCP to South Carolina. What he left out, though, Ron, and be honest about it, there was a lobbying-based exemption in that bill that allowed Chinese nationals to buy land within a 20-mile radius of a military base lobbied for by one of your donors. So I think we have to call a spade a spade. We need politicians who are independent of the forces that increase our dependence on China. My message to Xi Jinping is this. You are done buying land in this country. You will not donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until you play by the same set of rules.
Ramaswamy,
you're kicked out of the WTO, and you actually have to have accountability for the COVID-19 pandemic financially, which unleashed hell on the world. We have to hold them accountable.
Do you have a number and a plan?
I think that we need to increase our naval capacity by at least 20% over the course of the next several years. I think we have to, at minimum, be able to meet our AUKUS agreement standards. Right now, we are at risk of not even being able to meet our AUKUS standards with Australia and the UK. So what we need to do is have a plan that reverses the trajectory of the divest to invest program
Hugh, I'd like to
by 20% over the next 3 years.
Governor Christie?
You know, my first observation, Hugh, is that nobody answers your question. And my second observation is these three in the middle think they're the enemy. I know China is the enemy, and that's what we should be focused on. So let's be really clear. The nuclear submarines in this United States Navy is the greatest deterrent to Chinese aggression, and that is the first place I would go to increase American naval power. Our nuclear submarines are able to move stealthily, quietly, and effectively, and if we are going to deter
all the things Chris Christie hasn't been able to do since his 20s.
China from invading Taiwan, the only way we're going to do it is to make sure that they don't
got him.
Whether how many nuclear submarines from the United States of America are in the South China Sea and in that area and ready to strike on them if they decide to move on Taiwan. And so we, as our first priority, need to go directly to our nuclear sub program, Hugh, and we need to increase it drastically. That would be priority number one.
Can't even bring me. It's a crap joke. I was going to make some joke about a nuclear sub being like an 18-foot that he got from a sandwich shop, but I'm not going to do it.
Ships would come next, but to me,
the fat jokes must stop, Richard.
Here, the submarines
Grow
are
up.
the single most important thing that we could be deterring, that we could be using to deter China. But the other thing we could do to deter China is to let them know that the blood money they're spending for Russia in Ukraine right now will not be effective. That we send Putin home with his tail between his legs and make them understand that the same fate waits for them if they decide to move towards Taiwan with a more aggressive nuclear sub-program. We'll be able to make that threat real.
Thank you, Governor. We're going to take a brief pause now, and we'll be back to the Republican presidential primary debate. Please stay tuned.
We surely will.
And welcome back to tonight's NBC News Republican presidential debate. Once again, here's Hugh Hewitt.
Thank you, Lester. We're going to stay on China, and we're going to talk specifically about TikTok. Last week, Congressman Mike Gallagher, who is chairman of the House Bipartisan Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, published a long essay on TikTok following the flooding of pro-Hamas propaganda onto TikTok accounts across the United States.
Right. This is what happened. So, unironically, right? Okay, so for the boomers, you remember, quite famously, there was Bin Laden published a letter to America, sort of in the wake of the September the 11th attacks. And it was definitely him that I'm not getting into it. It was definitely him that wrote it, and that you can go online and you can find it. Anyway, it's been there for years. It was just something that was just reported in the media, and it had been out there for a while. And then influencers on TikTok they found the copy of the Bin Laden letter. And the Bin Laden letter obviously is critical of American society and other things besides. And they started reading it, and it would be like with fucking video game footage on like half the screen. And if you've read the letter, hang on, I'll see if I can get a copy of it actually. Because in the aftermath, because it went viral on TikTok, The Guardian had a copy of it, and The Guardian just took it down. they just removed it. It's just not there anymore. So here you go. I won't read you the letter itself. Probably that'll get clipped out of context if I start reading Bin Laden on Twitch. So we'll do that. But anyway, the hashtag Letter to America trended, and in a single day got like 1.8 million views. and it was TikTok influencers reading extracts of Bin Laden's letter. And people were, because he specifically addresses the Palestinian issue in it. In fact, I think he's got it here. Yeah, it's like he says, because it ends with Palestine shall not be seen captive, for we will try to break free its shackles. The United States shall pay for its arrogance with the blood of Christians and their funds. Peace be upon those who follow the righteous track. And so anyway, it goes viral. All the Zoomers are loving it, and they're posting stuff like, man, we've been lied to our entire lives. And it's like, you're getting a history lesson from Bin Laden, which may or may not even have been a psyop in the fucking first place. So anyway, this has come amid a backdrop of people already talking about banning TikTok because obviously it's a Chinese company, and Chinese companies work in conjunction with the Chinese state about data sharing and all that other stuff. But now this is extended into this broader hypothesis that the Chinese government forces anti-American rhetoric to trend as part of a way to break down American society and cause division. And so the theory is that the Chinese government allowed the Bin Laden, they pushed Bin Laden's letter to America. They pushed these influencer accounts. So all the fucking Zoomers would be like, what? I hate America now. Bin Laden, my best friend. And they'd join Hamas or something. So it's all a bit of a mess. But that's what happened, in case you don't understand the relevance of this debate question.
Chairman Gallagher called it shocking. He called the app predatory, controlled by America's preeminent adversary, one used to push propaganda and divide America. It's spyware, he said, a means of surveillance. Governor Christie, do you agree with Chairman Gallagher? And if so, would you ban or force the sale of TikTok?
I agree 100% with Chairman Gallagher, and let me say this. TikTok is not only spyware, it is polluting the minds of American young people all throughout this country, and they're doing it intentionally. And when you saw what happened in the last few weeks with all of this anti-Semitic, horrible stuff that their algorithms were pushing out at a gargantuan rate, this is China trying to...
Again, I just want to make it abundantly clear. I don't think the Chinese government were pushing any algorithms at all. I just think there's lots of lefties that hate America and don't like Jewish people. I think that's actually what happened. I think it was a perfectly natural phenomenon that needed no government intervention whatsoever. It's been bubbling for a long time. No one's addressed it. And now here we all are sort of dealing with it. But okay, it's the...
to further divide the United States of America.
Let's ban TikTok.
And this is one of the big failings among many of the Trump administration. He talked tough about TikTok. I heard him do it many times. But when it came down to
when you were working with him,
he did not ban them when he could have and should have. And now since then, we've had an additional nearly 6 years of this type of poison being put out throughout the United States, even putting aside the spying, which we know is going on, and the theft of American personal data and information. So in my first week as president, we would ban TikTok. They want to go ahead and sell it? Let them go ahead and sell it. But I'll tell you another reason we would do it. Facebook's not in China. X is not in China. They're not permitting a free flow of information to the Chinese people from our social media companies, yet we just open the door and let them do what they're doing. TikTok should be banned because they are poisoning American minds, and I would do it week one.
Thank you, Governor.
So Chris Christie there, just in case you missed it, made an argument that, hey, the Chinese government is suppressing information for their people, so we should do the exact same thing. And that'll show them. So, great stuff, Chris. Nailed that one.
Governor, I want to go to Governor DeSantis. Would you ban or force the sale of TikTok, regardless of whether or not China allowed American apps to operate in China?
Yes, I think that China is the top threat we face. They've been very effective at infiltrating different parts of our society. So my policy on China and the Chinese Communist Party is very simple. We win, they lose. And in order to do that, it's not just military. It's economic, and it's cultural. And as the dad of a 6'5" and a 3-year-old, I'm concerned about the data that they're getting from our young people and what they're doing to pollute the minds of our young people. These kids get these devices and they have a mind of their own. And I know a lot of parents are looking, it's hard to even keep it out. China's obviously the most extreme, but this is happening with other things. So we are going to do that, and we are going to make sure to protect the American people. It's a full spectrum approach to be able to fend China off. Yes, military deterrence. Yes, economic decoupling, but also their role in our culture. If we ignore that, we're not going to be able to win the fight.
I mean, what I love about that as well is the idea, oh, look, they're, if the kids get a hold of the TikTok machine, they might see things that'll warp their fragile minds and poison them, and they would be fed a steady diet of propaganda, said the American politician into the TV camera. Now stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I can't take anyone's stance on this fucking seriously at all, because it's like, I've literally watched American people get brainwashed by the most, like, basic of technology ever, for like 10 years. They're stupefyingly ill-informed on their own politics because MSNBC tells them something. So I don't know, maybe having Chinese propaganda in the mix isn't the worst thing. Well, whatever.
Ambassador Haley, speak to the parents out there. There are probably TikTok apps on half the phones in this auditorium.
No, I'm going to speak to the fact that 2 people hit me and you didn't let me respond. So let's first talk about the fact that they want to talk about the Chinese land from 10 years ago. Yes, I brought a fiberglass company 10 years ago to South Carolina. But Ron, you are the chair of your economic development agency that as of last week said Florida is the ideal place for Chinese businesses. Not only that, you have a company that is manufacturer of Chinese military planes. You have it. They are expanding 2 training sites at 2 of your airports now, one which is 12 miles away from a naval base. Then you have another company that's expanding, and they were just invaded by the Department of Homeland Security. So mine was 10 years ago.
You gave
Yours
them
was
stuff.
6
I
months
didn't
ago.
give them anything.
What's your story?
And I abolished that agency that she's talking about.
No,
Enterprise Florida, we abolished it, and of course we banned China from buying
the
land.
website
Not
last
exactly
week.
a
Go
great
check.
recruiting pitch if you're banning them from purchasing land
scrubbed
at
the
all.
website
So we've stood
last
up
week.
and we've done the right thing in Florida.
Mr.
Spoiler, no one has stood up to China in America. I mean, China own you. They own every little facet of things that you need for necessary life. We all saw what happened with supply chain issues during the pandemic. We also saw your attitude to fucking respect the science during that. Respect the science, but let's all go out to Chinatown to show how much we love our Asian American brothers and sisters, and let's all get COVID, said the Democrats. All right, cool. Nailed that one. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I like, you let Chinese spy balloons just hover over buildings of strategic importance and didn't shoot them down. I think China fucking absolutely owns the US right now, and everybody knows it, and everybody wants Chinese money and Chinese opportunity, and now we're all doing this thing about the fucking, because you've got to have a Cold War, obviously. You can't just have hot wars all the time, and you got to have a Cold War going on as well if you're America, and it's just bullshit. It's just nonsense.
Mr. Ramaswamy, we've talked about this. You campaign on TikTok. How do you get TikTok banned if you use it?
Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my
before
daughter
preaching to
out of your
anybody else's
voice.
adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy
scum.
answer is
You're just scum. Love this. What was really funny about this, and you might find this hard to believe, DeSantis, I think, said, both DeSantis and Haley were like, you shouldn't ever attack anyone's children. and then a fact checker from, the Democrat operatives, that LARPers journalists, said, Ron DeSantis said this, but they attack Hunter Biden every day. And it's like, Hunter Biden is a 52-year-old fucking crackhead with love children he refuses to acknowledge. Like, it's not quite the same thing. They literally did that. I'll have to bring it up, otherwise you won't believe it. It was on the same network. It was on NBC, unironically, but look, there it is. Ron DeSantis says it's out of bounds to attack candidates' kids, with one exception. And the article reads, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said Thursday he believes going after an opponent's children is out of bounds in political warfare. DeSantis, however, goes after President Joe Biden's son on a weekly basis. I think the kids are out of bounds. I didn't think that was an appropriate thing to do, DeSantis said, who has 3 young children. I kept the kids out of it for sure, he added on his own conduct. But out on the campaign trail, the governor does not shy from making a punchline out of Hunter Biden, 53, joking about his history of addiction and embarrassing details of his personal life that have surfaced publicly. Just a fucking clown fiesta.
Is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app. We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually transferring U.S. data to the Chinese. Here's a story most people don't know. Airbnb hands over U.S. user data to the CCP. Now, that's a U.S.-owned company. So this is the problem when you have Republicans that temporarily go the way the winds blow, and now it's popular to talk tough on China. When she was UN ambassador, called them literally, her words, not mine, our great friend. You can't be fair weather fans of the right policy. Get to the root cause. Even U.S. companies in Silicon Valley are regularly doing it. Cut the virtue signaling. The fact of the matter is Democrats are on TikTok today. The only person, one of the few people who is putting up content the way the actual algorithms work, speaking for pro-Israel views or others, is
Ambassador
me. And I
Haley,
predict more Republicans will join it. But stop U.S. companies from turning over data to Chinese companies. That's the real
moderators
answer, not the
like
virtue
Kristen
signal.
don't get to respond to personal attacks, but you do.
Thank you very much. When he talks about me praising China, he doesn't know the fact that the reason China was praised was because I negotiated with China and Russia the largest set of sanctions against North Korea in a generation. That is literally the reason North Korea stopped testing ballistic missiles. So I said China did good on their part. That was a negotiation you could never do.
What you said, Nikki. Those are your words, not mine. And so just own up to it.
You would never
you can
have been
change
able
your
to
mind.
get
That's
that
allowed.
negotiation
But don't
done.
lie to the people about what you've said or what you've done in
China
South Carolina.
My
You have brought
entire
them to South
career
Carolina.
at the
Ron is
United
right about
Nations.
that.
Every day I fought China, and I did it by making sure
hard
no
facts.
one
You
could
brought them
get
to this
any
country.
agency heads in UN. I did it by making sure that we called them out on human rights. I did it by making sure that we held them accountable on everything that they did. That's the reason we got out of Human Rights Council. That's the reason we called them out. And there's not been a day I haven't
Nikki,
stopped
Senator
reading.
Scott, it is your turn.
Policy
Mr.
experience with the millions you
Ramaswamy.
made afterwards.
Everybody else is hanging on to the rules here, Mr. Ramaswamy. Senator Scott.
Thank you. We should. I appreciate y'all clapping for me already. This is wonderful answer.
It's because I've already heard your answer, mate.
Any questions? What
Someone
we
else
should
said it.
do is ban TikTok, period. Now, we saw under former President Trump, he tried to ban TikTok twice, but was struck down by our federal courts. If you cannot ban TikTok, you should eliminate the Chinese presence on the app. Period. We also should provide, in my parents' Bill of Rights, we give parents the opportunity to give their kids permission under 14 to be on those apps. I think it's incredibly important for us as Americans to take back control of the information, especially of our kids. Where does it go? We should know that. One of the ways that we get to know that is by having a parental consent. But if we can eliminate TikTok, that is a first step.
Eliminate
But it's
TikTok.
not just TikTok. China continues to spy on our kids, but they're also buying our farmlands. We talked about that several times there. We have to make
Mate,
sure that we use
some of the biggest
tools
political
that
donors
enable
are spying
our
on your
children to
kids.
stop China
But that's another
from
story, I
buying
guess.
farmland near our bases. The third thing we have to do is make sure that they stop stealing our intellectual property. They're literally stealing our IP to compete against us. My administration, we stopped that day one, and we start making sure that we create six-figure income.
Like, I don't even get this when he made this point. How the fuck do you stop China stealing your intellectual property? It is, when it comes to copyright law and intellectual property law, it's as lawless as it gets. They'll just take whatever they want. You've all seen them video games, haven't you, where it looks like League of Legends, but it's not Blitzcrank, it's Shrek. He fires his hand and it's a mouth, and he says, "Get out, my swamp." You know, like you've all seen, no, they don't give a fuck. They're not playing nice at all, like, you know. And by the way, if they get their hands on any proprietary technology, just illegally, they're using it. It's theirs now, and there's zero recourse for you. So I don't understand how on day one you stop China stealing intellectual property. That's insane. That's like an insane thing, is it?
For jobs made in America through my strategy.
Kristen.
Hugh, thank you so much. We're now going to talk about Venezuela, where millions
yeah, why not?
Political and economic turmoil. Many Venezuelan immigrants are settling right here in Florida. Former President Trump and President Biden have taken different approaches to Nicolas Maduro's regime with little result. Former President Trump put economic pressure on Venezuela and backed one of Maduro's rivals. President Biden temporarily eased sanctions to encourage electoral reforms. Governor DeSantis, do you see the political situation in Venezuela as a threat to the United States, and what would your approach be?
We should never rely on Venezuela for oil like Biden has had to go beg. I'm going to unleash all of America's energy potential. On day one, I'm taking all the Biden regulations, the Green New Deal, ripping it up and throwing it in the trash can where it belongs. We're going to lower your gas prices. We're going to create jobs. We're going to lower energy costs. But we're also going to be more energy independent and secure. We'll choose Midland over Moscow. We'll choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs. And we'll choose Bakken over Beijing. That is good for America's national security. Biden's Green New Deal, that's good for Venezuela, it's good for Russia, it's good for Iran, and it's good for China. So I would turn the screws on the Venezuelan regime. I think it's a corrupt, dictatorial regime, and we should never go hat in hand begging for oil from them.
Just to be
American politicians never got over how fucking hard Hugo Chavez fucked them when he was the chairman of OPEC. They're still reeling from that one, I guess. But all right, fine.
clear, would you reimpose the sanctions?
Yes, absolutely.
Ambassador Haley, what would your approach be?
You know, I stood on the Simon Bolivar Bridge and watched thousands of Venezuelans cross for hours in the hot sun holding their babies to get the one meal they might get that day going from Venezuela to Colombia. They were
super compassionate watching refugees and migrants cross a border just because they want to feed their kids and get a hot meal. Not the American border, though.
Fleeing social
Never that border.
begging for freedom. We need to make sure that we do everything we can to sanction Maduro. We shouldn't be getting dirty oil, and Biden just gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary priority status, which is just going to have more of them come. But on the energy side, it cracks me up that Ron continues to do this. He has opposed fracking. He's opposed drilling. Last time he said it wasn't true, and everybody found out that it was true. He opposed it before Florida voters even voted on it. He was praised by the Sierra Club, and you're trying to make up for it and act like you weren't a liberal when it comes to the environment. You were. You always have been. Just own it if that's the case. But don't keep saying you're something that you're not.
Let me respond to that. Our whole energy plan, you can't get the shale without fracking. We are absolutely going to frack, but I disagree with Nikki Haley. I don't think it's a good idea to drill in the Florida Everglades, and I know most Floridians agree with me.
You ban fracking.
Thank you very much.
By the way, nothing to do with the debate. Anyone else getting that dude who just walks around the Florida Everglades and goes, yoink, and he just picks up, like, mad animals and that. You must have seen him. It's like... That's fucking insane. That guy, like, he's just picking up fucking all sorts of shit, looking for his 20-foot reticulated python. There's a joke there, but it's beneath me.
Thank you. Let's turn to one of the biggest issues for voters. That, of course, is the economy. This is a question that will go to all of you. An Iowa voter recently told NBC News, "How am I going to make sure my pantry's stocked without breaking the bank?" You've all said the best way to deal with rising prices is to cut government spending. But that would take time to play out, and Americans are struggling right now. Senator Scott, I'll start with you. What would you do the moment you take office to help Americans manage the cost of living? So we're talking about short term here.
My mother was a single mother who raised me and my brother in a very challenging
Here it is,
economic
the
situation.
bootstraps.
The first thing I can tell you is that when your gas prices are 40% higher right now than they were just a little over 2 years ago, that's not a problem for my mama. That was a crisis. The first thing I would do as President of the United States is I would sign the XL Keystone Pipeline and start seeing resources flow. Second thing I would do is make sure that there's certainty and predictability so that those folks who have the leases in our country would have the certainty and predictability to go ahead and become energy independent. We should focus not just on being energy independent, we should focus on being energy dominant. America is the home to more energy resources than any other country on the planet. We can reduce the price of energy, we can reduce the price
I don't know if that's true. I would wager that's not true.
If we focus on my build here, don't borrow from China plan that is embedded the Made in America strategy, creates 10 million new jobs in 3 different areas. One is innovation.
He really went for it there. 10 million new jobs. Remember, I just said 4 million in the military, but it's 10 now. Yay. Just dead, stone cold. No one in the audience give a fuck.
The high-tech manufacturing. And the third is the energy economy. We have an opportunity as Americans to actually export the surplus energy that we create in our nation and disconnect from China and from murderous dictators and tyrants around the world.
Your time is up, but let me just follow up. The idea of pumping gas, of turning on pipelines, that doesn't make gas cheaper that day. I'm talking about you become president. What can you do specifically to help people feel better about their situation or be better with their situation?
Well, actually, it does, to be honest with you. The way that the economy works is it works on the ability to anticipate excess supply versus the demand. When that happens, confidence drives our prices down because we know there's going to be a greater surplus. When you allow for those who have leases to actually start drilling, to start using those leases for more energy excavation, you put our economy in the strongest position. And as a result of that, prices start going down. That is the kind of economy that, as President of the United States, I would lead this nation to making sure that we first.
That's a good comment there, underrated. He's right. I have done this in Victoria 3.
Outside of our country in order to achieve
available in the most recent Steam sale for half price.
Proverbs 22:7 reminds us that the borrower is slave to the lender. We have become an indentured servant too often to countries like China. By having an energy economy, we start allowing this nation to once again return.
Senator, thank you. Let me ask the same question to Governor DeSantis. Can you give us some, you ticked off a number of things a moment ago, but some specific examples of ways that would put people on a better economic footing right away?
So I started off working minimum wage jobs. I did $6 an hour as an electrician's assistant. I worked all kinds of things to be able to get through school. And I did that because I believed in America, if you work hard and get the most out of your God-given ability, you can get ahead. And what's happening now, many of you are working hard and you're falling further and further behind. I've met people in Iowa, New Hampshire, and all across the country who've talked about all the burdens that they're facing with the rising prices. And I've heard from multiple people the same story. When they go grocery shopping, what they now do is they figure out what they have to take out of the cart once it's ringing up, because it rings up so much faster and so much higher at the cash register that they can't afford the full cart of groceries anymore.
Sounds like you've been talking to morons, Ron. Just saying, bro. Like, you do shops like that? Who does that? Right, I fill up the basket with all the shit I want, and, oh, wait, I can't afford it. Better take some stuff out. Like, who's doing that? I've never heard of that in my life.
We have to restore the American dream in this country. What can you do on day one? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the executive orders, the regulations, everything involving Bidenomics. I'm going to rip it up, and I'm going to throw it in the trash can on day one where it belongs. That is going to give the economy breathing room, and I'm also going to rein in the Federal Reserve. They have helped create, with their reckless monetary policy, what we have faced since the COVID-19 pandemic. They botched it. Congress botched it. Both parties are to blame. Fed should focus on stable prices. They are not an economic central planner for the American people.
Governor, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy,
Print all your money, though.
Ways that you can improve people's financial condition in the short term.
Right, and as a CEO, the economic question is core to my vision and policy prescription for this country. Increase the supply of everything. It's the law of supplies and demand. Increase the supply of energy. That brings down the cost of energy, grows the economy. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear. Increase the supply of labor in this country. Stop using our taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home instead of to go to work. Increase the supply of housing. People don't talk about this one in the Republican Party. The land use restrictions are constricting the supply of housing. That's making housing more expensive for ordinary Americans across this country. So that's the true answer. And I think it takes a CEO in the White House who actually understands this to get this done. Because Americans at home, they know the Bidenomics is a lie. Prices are going up. Interest rates and mortgages to buy your home are going up. But wages have remained flat. That's the hard diagnosis for our economy.
Not wrong.
And this is about more than just our economy. I say this as a member of my generation. I'm 38 years old. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. The reason my generation has lost our sense of national pride, in part, is because people in my generation feel like the American dream isn't available to them. And part of the reason why is we've burdened them with four-year college degrees that did not serve their head start on the American dream. People will be more proud of a country if we're all making more money in that country. This is how we revive national pride and our identity, and it will take a CEO in the White House with zero-based budgeting, by the way, to take on the federal debt to get this job done.
Let me turn to Governor Christie on that.
Well, look, Lester, part of the entire premise of the question, and I agree with Tim on this, is absolutely energy is the key to this because it drives every one of those other prices. You know, now food gets to your grocery store, it gets...
He goes straight for that, of course.
Yeah. Trucked. And those truckers have to pay for fuel, for the higher fuel prices. And when you go ahead and you tell people, we are going to unleash every bit of American energy, every bit of its potential, what happens in the futures markets? The prices go down because those people who are believing that the Biden program will continue are the ones who are bidding this up. And let me tell you the other place that's bidding it up, in the Middle East. And so if you don't believe that making sure that Israel and that Israel situation that's going on right now isn't resolved and resolved quickly as President of the United States and bring stability back, that will also not permit.
I love this as well. The notoriously stable Middle East. Like, it's so insane that it's framed that way. That basically, as long as Israel isn't under direct attack temporarily, the Middle East is stable. It's like, yeah, fucking great.
Countries like Saudi Arabia and others to be able to jack their prices as well in what they say is in response to a crisis, when it's really what it's in response to is putting more money in their pockets. When they have an American president who knows that Israel must be defended not with humanitarian pauses and not with suggestions for ceasefire, but with letting them know we will supply them with everything they need, that will also bring stability to the market. Energy is the key to bringing this down. It's what every American family needs when they turn on their lights, fill up their car, and go to the grocery store. And we need to do that first and foremost. That's the short-term answer.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me come at this from a slightly different direction. Americans in rural communities are being especially squeezed by inflation right now. An Iowa State University study found that last year inflation cost rural households about an extra $5,000. How would you specifically help rural Americans who are suffering right now, Ambassador?
Well, I'm a product of rural America. I grew up in rural South Carolina, and I can tell you what we're seeing now in America is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We have to go and start beefing up the middle class, and the first thing I would do is I will eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. We'll cut taxes on the middle class, but we have to stop this spending binge that's happening by Republicans and Democrats in Congress. I will make sure, one, we claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, we'll go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that exist, one out of every $7. We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't go back to pre-COVID levels. That will cut trillions and allow us to be safe. We also need to be not energy independent, energy dominant. We are blessed with resources. Let's do it. But the reason no one should give you a number, Hugh, on the amount of ships in the Navy is because in a few years, our interest expense is going to be more than our defense budget. So no one can give you that number realistically without first tackling what's happening with the financial situation. It would be a false number to give you that. We have got to understand this is a crisis. It is a national security concern. If we don't deal with what's going to happen with that interest expense in a few years, we're going to look like Japan, and we can't let that happen. The strong dollar matters.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
We're going to look like Japan.
Americans could see their Social Security benefits drastically cut in the next decade because the program is running out of money. Former President Trump has said, quote, under no circumstances should Republicans cut entitlements. Governor Christie, first to you. You have proposed raising the retirement age for younger Americans. What would that age be specifically, and would you consider making any other reforms to Social Security?
Sure, and we have to deal with this problem. Now, look, if we raise the retirement age a few years for folks that are in their 30s and 40s, I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old. If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments. And the fact is, we need to be realistic about this. There are only three things that go into determining whether Social Security can be solvent or not: retirement age, eligibility for the program in general, and taxes. That's it. We are already overtaxed in this country, and we should not raise those taxes. But on eligibility also, I don't know if out there tonight, and if you're watching Warren, I don't know if Warren Buffett is collecting Social Security, but if he is, shame on you. You shouldn't be taking the money. There are a lot of programs in this country that we all pay for that we don't get a direct benefit from. Food stamps is one of them. I've never, fortunately in my life, ever had me or my family on food stamps. But I'm glad it's there so that no one in this country goes to bed hungry at night if they have availability to that program. But I don't get a direct benefit. The fact is, on Social Security, remember why it was established. It was established as a safety net program to make sure that no one would grow old in this country in poverty. That's what we got to get back to. Rich people should not be collecting Social Security.
Governor, can you give me a specific age?
It's bold.
70,
I don't hate it.
No, look,
it's a
that's
policy.
Going to be a power of negotiation with Congress, Kirsten. And hell, I'm not going to start negotiating until I get there.
All right, Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in on this, because you said in June that you would be open to raising the retirement age. Have you determined what that age would be specifically, and what other reforms are you looking at?
So first of all, any candidate that tells you that they're not going to take on entitlements is not being serious. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Right now you have Ron and Trump joining Biden and Pelosi saying they're not going to change or do any sort of entitlement reform. What we need to do is keep our promises. Those that have been promised should keep it. But for like my kids in their 20s, you go and you say we're going to change the rules. You change the retirement age for them. Instead of cost of living increases, we should go to increases based on inflation. We should limit benefits on the wealthy. Bernie Marcus can tell you he hates getting that check. Limit the benefits on the wealthy, and then expand Medicare Advantage plans. Seniors love that, and let's make sure we do that so that they can have more competition. That's how we'll deal with entitlement reform, and that's how we'll start to pay down this debt.
And can you give me a specific age? Have you determined the age?
Again, you have to work with Chris. What I can tell you is it's going to be those in their 20s just coming into the system, and it should reflect more of life expectancy. It doesn't do that now.
All right, Mr. Ramaswamy, have you
life expectancy in America is going down?
Entitlements and Social Security
for the first time in ages.
So this is really important right now. We're working within the last window I believe we will have to actually fix this problem while still leaving Social Security and Medicare benefits for current seniors intact. I'll tell you how. The other candidates assume, like Nikki, that it can't be done. And on her math, she's right about it. But her math assumes $7 trillion of our $33 trillion national debt going to fight wars like in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Minus that, our national debt would be $26 trillion right now. Then you go to zero-based budgeting, which I've proposed as a CEO. It's how I've run businesses. It's how many CEOs run businesses. Don't use last year's budget as the baseline. Start with zero as the baseline, and then ask what's actually necessary. 75% headcount reduction. Yes, that is severe. In the number of federal employees in the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. Shut down redundant agencies that should not exist. Deliver economic growth as a positive tailwind. I think we can get to 3, 4, maybe even 5% GDP growth if we really take the regulatory shackles off of our economy. And against that backdrop, I believe this is our last best window.
Last time the regulatory shackles were completely unfettered, we got the subprime fucking mortgage crisis. But
the foreign wars that many bloodthirsty
members
members of both parties have a hunger for. That's the one secret for how we're going to be able to do this, and that requires discipline. So we can't have the first conversation we were having, sending foreign aid willy-nilly to countries whose national debt per capita is less than ours.
Thank you,
but
Mr.
if we do this
Ramaswamy.
correctly, I think this is our last window, and it'll take a CEO from the next generation to do it.
Thank you very much. Senator Scott, weigh in here. What are you looking at to keep Social Security sustainable?
The bottom line is a simple one. We have to grow our economy and cut our spending. Let me just say to my mama and to every other mama or grandfather receiving Social Security, as President of the United States, I will protect your Social Security. The fact is that we're spending today about $1.1 trillion on Social Security, about $750 billion on Medicare, about $300 billion on Medicaid, about $400 billion on veterans benefits, $1.7 trillion on annual appropriations. If we're going to actually tame this tiger, the way you do it is not by picking on seniors who have paid into a program that deserve their money coming back out to them. The way you deal with it is, number one, you have to grow your economy. My plan, Made in America, creates 10 million new jobs, grows our economy at 5%. By doing so, you add trillions of dollars of economic activity and billions of dollars to your treasury. Number two, you have to cut taxes.
Look at everyone just staring like, I don't know, Tim.
I wrote the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Everybody said,
I don't know, bro.
Guess what? Revenue will go down. Well, in 2018, after we wrote it in 2017, what happened? Revenue went up by 3%, and the next year it went up by another 3%. So what we know is that the Laffer curve still works, but the lower the tax, the higher the revenue. And finally, if we're going to deal with it, we have to take our annual appropriations back to pre-2020, pre-COVID levels of spending, which would save us about $500 billion in the next budget window. By doing that, we deal with Social Security and our mandatory spending.
Thank you, Senator. Very quickly, would you raise the retirement age? Would you be open to raising the retirement age, or do you rule that out?
All you have to do is go to a farm in Iowa and watch the hard work and the dedication.
Yes or
you
no,
and I
though,
having
Senator?
a conversation.
Yes or
the
no,
answer
though?
is no, but listen to this, though, before you go on. Thank you. The fact of the matter is that the more physical your labor, a year or 2 or 3 more is actually challenging to the physical body. You and I might have a different perspective, but for those farmers, they're working night and day.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. Governor DeSantis, finally to you, would you be open to raising the retirement age, and how would you keep Social Security sustainable?
Well, look, as governor of Florida, I know a few people on
the
Social
retirement
Security,
capital
and,
of
I know it's important. My grandmother lived till 91, and Social Security was her sole source of income, and that's true for a lot of seniors throughout this country. So what I'd say to seniors in America, promise made, promise kept. I understand what you're going through with the rising prices, and you need that Social Security check. So we'll make sure to get that done. What can you do to help shore up Social Security? One of the things that's causing problems is the inflation. We have to reduce inflation. When you have higher inflation, the seniors get a cost of living adjustment, which means the program's spending more, but it doesn't cover the increase in the actual inflation rate. We also do need to get to at least 3% growth. You're never going to be able to have issues, be able to solve the budget without that. But I would note this. Congress for decades took money from Social Security. Social Security would have more tax revenue that it put out. They would take it and then they'd write an IOU to Social Security.
Correct.
Congress has
It's a Ponzi scheme.
Hands
yes.
on this. I'm going to force Congress.
It's a Ponzi scheme and a petty savings account for the American government at the same time.
Yeah. Is something that's changed in the last 4 or 5
and now
years.
it's fucked for some reason.
Life expectancy in the United States is declining.
So, Governor,
in this
yes
country.
or no? Would you raise it? Would you raise the retirement age?
When life expectancy is declining, I don't see how you could raise it the other direction. So it's one thing to peg it on life expectancy, but we have had a significant decline in life expectancy in this country,
So
and that's just the fact.
Yep,
all right,
true.
Governor DeSantis, thank you. Thank you, candidates. And we will be right back after a quick break from Miami, Florida.
Dun, 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 dun.
Welcome back to tonight's NBC News Republican presidential debate. Once again, here's Salem Radio's Hugh Hewitt.
Thank you, Lester. When NBC News talks to voters, when I talk to voters every day, they all say that the border is a top issue. It can mean a lot of different things. It can mean 2 million people who crossed illegally last year. It can mean more than 150 arrests of people on the terror watch list. It can mean the burden on states from having migrants move into their states from the southwestern border. But I want to talk about opioids specifically and fentanyl. And I'll start with you, Senator Scott. Tens of thousands of Americans' families have suffered a death to fentanyl. Young people sometimes die taking one pill. What can you do as Commander-in-Chief on the first day to stop fentanyl and the waterfall of it into this country?
Well, number one, we should close our southern border. For $10 billion, we could close our southern border. For an additional $5 billion, we could use the currently available military technology to surveil our southern border to stop fentanyl from crossing our border. I've already led on legislation that would sanction the Mexican cartels. If you remember the path, the precursors come from China. Then they are manufactured in Mexican labs, and then the Mexican cartels bring them across our border. By sanctioning their accounts and eliminating their cash, we starve them of what they need. Number one, closing our southern border makes it nearly impossible to get in. The military-grade technology is a backup, making sure that we not only stop 70,000
closing the border
deaths
makes it near on impossible to get in. What are you babbling
allows
about?
us to deal with the
like close the border like it's a fucking door, you know?
Entering in our country in the same path. If we are going to deal effectively with 100,000 overdose deaths in our country and the 70,000 that is directly linked to fentanyl, we have to deal with our ports of entry and deal with our southern border.
I will say, out of all the candidates, he says fentanyl the coolest. I love the way he says fentanyl. It fucking makes you want some. It fucking gets some of that
fentanyl. If we do
fentanyl.
that effectively, we have started reducing the challenge from the outside, and then we have to deal with the challenge on the inside, which seems to be connected to a mental health crisis that is spreading throughout our nation.
Governor Christie,
the mental health. You're giving me a mental health crisis.
90% of the fentanyl that is seized in the United States is seized at ports of entry. We don't know what's coming in across the open southern border. You've been a United States attorney. You've taken on cartels. Can it really be done quickly? What would you do as president?
It can be done quickly in two ways, Hugh, on fentanyl. The first way is exactly as you suggest, at ports of entry. We have to beef up what our law enforcement has in terms of technology. I would invest in that as president. We need to make sure that law enforcement has every tool at its disposal to do it. Secondly, on day one, I would sign an executive order that would send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol, both at ports of entry and at the open ports of our border. Customs and Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed. There's 200,000 encounters a month over the last 11 months. We simply do not have the man and woman power at the border to be able to deal with it. And so dealing with both law enforcement, and you're right, we have done this, we can do this, but we got to give them the tools to do it, and technology is one of the biggest tools that we don't have enough of at the ports of entry. Now, we also need to lower demand, Hugh, in this country. And the way to lower demand is to start treating people again. You know, we started to do this before COVID, and we haven't done enough of it. And for every family out there tonight who has lost a loved one to fentanyl or to any other type of opioid overdose, what you know is all you want is a chance for them to win their lives back. When I'm president of the United States, we're going to call this what it is. It is a disease like heart disease, diabetes, or any other disease like cancer that can be treated, should be treated. We not only have to stop supply, but we have to lower demand and save lives.
Thank you, Governor. Governor DeSantis, you have talked about using United States Special Forces to attack the cartels where they manufacture the chemicals that come from China. How often? How many? What does that look like?
Well, first, I was speaking.
Still yet to see any sort of real, like, conclusive evidence that there's some sort of Mexican cartel, Chinese fentanyl connection. Like, I don't know, maybe there is, but every time I look into it, it's very sort of like tenuous. Like, and as I've said multiple times, it's also a known fact that the cartel is fucking actively killing people that are cutting drugs with fentanyl because it's bringing so much fucking heat on their drug operation. That's like a thing that's being talked about in the fucking media, you know? So it kind of fucking feels weird. But again, it might be real. You know, no reason to doubt it. China definitely mass manufactures pharmaceuticals.
Into a dad who lost a son to fentanyl overdose. Son wasn't a drug addict. He had taken some pill that happened to be laced with fentanyl, and it was a fatal overdose. And when he told me, obviously the pain of losing a child is as bad as it gets, but he said what was salt in the wounds is that these elites in D.C. don't give a damn about what's going on in this country. They don't care that we have tens of thousands of opioid deaths, that the fentanyl's pouring in. They are not taking the type of action we need to. We're declaring it a national emergency on day one. I'm sending U.S. military to the border. I'm going to stop the invasion cold. I am going to deport people who came illegally. And I'm even going to build the border wall and have Mexico pay for it like Donald Trump promised. How are you going to do it? Yeah, Mexico's not going to fork over money. We're going to impose fees on the remittances that foreign workers send to foreign countries. We'll raise billions of dollars. I'll build a wall. But we are going to designate the cartels to be foreign terrorist organizations or something similar to that. And we're going to authorize the use of deadly force. We're going to have maritime operations to interdict precursor chemicals going into Mexico. But I'll tell you this, if someone in the drug cartels is sneaking fentanyl across the border when I'm president, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to shoot them stone cold dead.
Ambassador Haley.
Stone cold dead.
Ambassador Haley, if the United States uses special forces in Mexico without prior notice to the Mexican allies to our south, what would your colleagues at the United Nations think about that?
I don't care what my colleagues at the United Nations think. What I'll tell you is, first of all, you have to go to the source. We have lost more Americans than the Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars combined. We lost 75,000 Americans last year.
And trust me, she knows the death numbers about wars because she strums herself silly every night thinking about it. So her numbers will be accurate.
To the source, it is the reason why we'll continue to say we will end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans. You watch how quick that flow stops. The second thing is we'll send special operations in to take out the cartels. We need to go to where they're distributing it, where the supply centers are, and take them out. We'll put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We will defund sanctuary cities. We will go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that everybody stays in Mexico and they never get here in the first place. And instead of catch and deport, we'll go to catch and release. Instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is the way we'll deal with the border. Those are the things that we have to do going forward. But I do agree with Chris. One of the first things that we have to do is really focus on mental health and addiction centers. It is something that is needed in our country terribly because we don't deal with mental health, and someone who doesn't get care for mental health falls into addiction, and we owe it to them to treat it like the cancer that it is.
Mr. Ramaswamy, special forces in Mexico, shoot them stone cold dead at the border?
One thing I just want to say, and how we're talking about this issue is, like Ron, I've actually met many parents across this country who have lost their kids to laced pharmaceuticals that have fentanyl in them. The only thing I would ask, Ron, I think you'd be on the same page with me on this. Let's not even call that an overdose. Right. That is not an overdose. That is poisoning. If you put that fentanyl in a Big Mac, we would not call that an overdose.
If you put that fentanyl in a Big Mac, fucking Christie would eat it.
You'd call it what it is. It's closer to bioterrorism. And I say that because as it uniquely relates to this crisis, that does warrant more aggressive means to deal with it. So there's a new presidential election in Mexico in 2024. People may not be aware of that. It's going to be someone other than Obrador, who has been a disaster in Mexico. I think he's even mentioned me obliquely in speeches to say that somebody who would do this shouldn't get anywhere near the White House. Well, AMLO, get out of the way. There's going to be someone else in charge. I hope to build a good relationship with that next president of Mexico. We'll use our own military to seal our own southern border. What we need to do is stop using our military to protect somebody else's border halfway around the world when we're short right here at home. Get serious about protecting this border. And then the other thing that hasn't been discussed is the northern border. I'm the only candidate on the stage, as far as I'm aware, who has actually visited the northern border. There was enough fentanyl that was captured just on the northern border last year to kill 3 million Americans. So we got to just skate to where the puck is going, not just where the puck
Mace Nikki Haley didn't fucking get it.
is. Don't just build the wall, build both walls. Can't just complete the wall, use the military to seal the Swiss cheese for the tunnels that they're actually building underneath that wall.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what needs to be
Ramaswamy.
practical and actually get this job done.
Thank you. Kristen.
Thank you, Hugh. Let's talk now about last night's election results. Abortion
Here we
rights
go.
supporters saw victories in Ohio and Virginia following earlier wins in states like Kansas and Kentucky.
Dumbest thing you
Governor
ever did?
DeSantis, first to
Republican
you,
Party,
how do you see the path
Trump's
forward
legacy.
for Republicans on this issue?
You fucked it.
Well, I stand for a culture of life, and I understand that it's important that everyone gets a shot.
Man who said, if you try to smuggle drugs across our border, it'll be the last thing you ever do. We will shoot you stone cold dead. I support a culture of life, by the way. I'm very, very into the concept and the sanctity of human life.
I'm reminded of a story about a young mother who was struggling in Jamaica about 45 years ago. She was counseled to not have a baby because she was poor, baby wouldn't have opportunity, and she came close to have an abortion, but she decided to have the baby, born poor in Jamaica. And the reason I know that story is because that baby girl ended up emigrating to the state of Florida, becoming a lawyer and a judge, and I appointed her to the Florida Supreme Court in August of 2022.
Girl boss shit.
When everybody counts.
Well done, Rob.
We're better off when we can promote a culture of life. At the same time, I understand that some of these states are doing it a little bit different. Texas is not going to do it the same as...
I can tell you a counter story that's kind of cool. I knew this one family. They did have an abortion, and the baby that they aborted would have gone on to be a serial killer and rapist. So, yeah, guess it all balances out in a way, doesn't it? If you tell fucking totally ridiculous fabricated stories to back up your particular viewpoint.
New Hampshire, Iowa's not necessarily going to do it the same as Virginia. So you got to work from the bottom up. You got to do a better job on these referenda. I think of all the stuff that's happened to the pro-life cause, they have been caught flat-footed on these referenda, and they have been losing the referenda. A lot of the people who are voting for the referenda are Republicans who would vote for a Republican candidate. So you got to understand how to do that. But let's just be clear. The Democrats have taken a position. They will not identify the point at which there should be any protection all the way up until birth. That is wrong, and we cannot stand for that.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in. Former President Trump has consistently blamed the abortion issue and how Republican candidates have talked about it for their electoral losses. How do you see the path forward?
You know, I've said it before. I think you have to be honest with the American people. This is a personal issue for every woman and every man. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband Michael was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children. So I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, when you look post-Roe, a wrong was made right. They took it.
Instead of IVF, they... I can't even believe I'm saying this one. Instead of IVF, what they did is, when they were attempting to conceive, they just put fucking footage of the Vietnam War in the background of just having villages just having fucking Agent Orange dropped on it, and her fertility levels just fucking jumped up enough to fucking slam a bun in the oven.
It out of the hands of unelected justices and they put it in the hands of the people. And now we're seeing states vote. And what I'll tell you is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There's some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes to the federal law, which is what's being debated here, be honest, it's going to take 60 Senate votes, a majority of the House, and a president to sign it. So no, we haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws. So let's find consensus. Let's agree on how we can ban late-term abortions. Let's make sure we encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions. Let's make sure we make contraception accessible. Let's make sure that none of these state laws put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty for getting an abortion. Let's focus on how to save as many babies as we can and support as many moms as we can, and stop the judgment. We don't need to divide America over this issue anymore.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Completely reasonable, of course. Like, literally her only reasonable angle on anything.
Senator Scott, I'd like you to weigh in. How do you see the path forward, and what do you make of what Ambassador Haley just said? Do you see this as a consensus issue?
Well, I'm 100% pro-life. I have had 100% pro-life voting record. I would certainly, as President of the United States, have a 15-week national limit. I would not allow states like California, Illinois, or New York to have abortion up until the day of birth. I certainly wouldn't not allow for governors, former governor, Democratic governor of Virginia, who talked about infanticide. We need a 15-week federal limit. 3 out of 4 Americans agree with a 15-week limit. 47 out of 50 countries in Europe agree with a 15-week limit. I would challenge both Nikki and Ron to join me at a 15-week limit. It is in our nation's best interest. And frankly, I think it's unethical and immoral to allow for abortions up until the day of birth. We have an opportunity in this nation to stop
I don't really care,
reckless
but
behavior from states like California.
In contrast to the rest of the world, that's pretty crazy.
In my parents' plan, we start by talking about funding, block granting resources to crisis pregnancy centers. We should support adoption. There are a number of ways that we can say to the expectant mother that we stand with you. We should not only be pro-life before the child is born, we should be pro-life after the child is born just as much.
Senator Scott, thank you. Ambassador Haley, your name was invoked. Would you support a 15-week federal limit?
I would support anything that would pass because that's what would save more babies and support more moms. But you have to be honest with the American people, and I appreciate that Tim keeps calling me out for this. But Tim, there was a bill last year. Lindsey Graham sponsored it. You didn't even co-sponsor the bill. And then when you first were interviewed on
Ripping up Tim.
when you ran, you wouldn't even
How
say
dare
you were
you,
for
Nikki.
15 weeks. What I am saying to the American people is, let's see what we can agree on. Let's bring
How
people
can you
together
pick
and
on
decide
Tim?
what we can agree on. I will sign anything where we can get 60 Senate votes, but don't make the American people think that you're going to push something on them when we don't even have the votes in the Senate. It's important that we're honest about that.
Let me go to Mr. Ramaswamy. Would you support a 15-week federal ban, and what is the path forward?
No, go on, Vivek.
I mean, Nikki Haley didn't invoke being honest, and I at least want to give credit to Tim Scott. He's honest about where he stood, and I think you should be honest, not making a political calculus, but to say, if a bill is served up, would you sign it? Here's my view on this. Speaking as a man, they say men have trouble speaking on this issue. I don't think we need to be that way. It was my home state of Ohio, I'm upset about this, yesterday, that passed a constitutional amendment that now effectively codifies a right to abortion all the way up to the time of birth without parental consent. Why? It's back to that Republican culture of losing. The Republicans did not have an alternative amendment or vision on the table. I know Ohio. I was born, raised, and I lived there. It's representative of the country. If in the state of Ohio we talked about access to contraception, adoption, and also here's the missing ingredient in this movement, sexual responsibility for men. We live in an era of reliable genetic paternity tests that are 100% reliable. So we can say men deserve more responsibility. So we can tell women we're all in this together. It's not men's rights versus women's rights. It's about human rights. And I come back to that case that Clarence Thomas spoke of. A pregnant woman walking down the street. She's assaulted. The unborn child dies in that assault. You find me one person in this country who says that that criminal does not deserve liability for that death. You won't find one. That says we share the same instincts on this issue, but we require, I believe, a different generation of leadership to actually lead us forward and unite the country on this with honesty.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Governor Christie, as you know, federal limits are important to a lot of Republicans. Where do you stand on this issue, and what is the path forward for Republicans?
For 50 years, conservative lawyers have been arguing that the federal government should have absolutely nothing to do with this issue constitutionally because it's nowhere in the Constitution. And then Dobbs comes and we finally gain that victory, which was the creation of a constitutional right out of thin air that didn't exist. And now we have people running to say, let's short circuit the states from doing what they need to do, and let's go right to some type of federal ban at a certain number of weeks. And people on the stage have been all over the place, 20 weeks, 15 weeks, 12, 6. Look, the Frowners were really smart. And this is an issue that should be decided in each state. And I trust the people of this country state by state, to make the call for themselves. Now, that's going to lead to a lot of divergence. In Oklahoma, you can't get an abortion unless the life of the mother is at risk. In my home state of New Jersey, it goes up to 9 months that you get an abortion. I find that morally reprehensible, but that is what the people of our state have voted for. And we should not short circuit that process until every state's people have the right to weigh in on it. But here's the bigger issue, Kirsten. The bigger issue is, and Tim began to touch on this, we're not pro-life for the whole life. To be pro-life for the whole life means that the life of a 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup is precious, and we should get treatment for her to restore her life. The 52-year-old who's drug addicted should make sure that any of his children who he's passed that addiction on to are treated well too. Pro-life's not just in the womb, Kirsten, it's for the whole life.
All right,
yeah,
Governor,
Republicans
thank you.
known.
Candidates, thank you. We're going to take a final break, and when we come back, we'll hear from all of you with your closing statements. This is the NBC News Republican presidential debate. We'll be back right after this.
It's time for the grand finale. Everyone sign off with your strongest points. To agreeable leg in the chat, Trump is boycotting the debates because all that would happen is everyone would just be asking him about all his legal troubles, and he would end up saying something legally incriminating. So his lawyers, I'm pretty sure his lawyers have said, do not under any circumstances go on those fucking debates. Just saying. I mean, as we'll get to, he's also massively ahead in the polls, and I'm certainly in the political minority in saying I still don't think he will be the GOP nominee. Just so you know, all of this, like a lot in American politics, it's political theater. It doesn't really matter who wins because it's held up in the Supreme Court that a political party doesn't have to nominate the candidate with the highest percentage of support. They're under no obligation to do that whatsoever. So it doesn't have to be Trump. I think Trump is a suicide pact. I think Trump is the only politician that could lose to Biden, even as Biden gets progressively more and more impaired. So,
well, welcome back, everyone. With only 2 hours for a debate, we know there are other major issues that are important to Republican primary voters. I'll ask you each to please use your closing statement to focus on any topic you didn't have time to address and why you and not former President Trump would be the party's best choice to tackle these important issues. You each have a minute. Senator Scott, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
There's a crisis that is growing in our nation, and that crisis is cultural and spiritual. We need a renewal, a great awakening. We should reject the left's valueless, faithless, fatherless society.
He called them fatherless, guys.
To faith,
fighting words,
patriotism, and individual responsibility. We should stop choosing victimhood and start choosing victory. We should stop kneeling in protest and start kneeling in prayer. There are basic truths that built this country. If you're able-bodied in America, you work. If you take out a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to jail. And if God made you a man, you play sports against men. I do not just want to...
Audience, please.
I do not just want to win the battle against Joe Biden. I want us together to win the war for our Christian conservative values that changed my life.
Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, you have...
That's why I'm asking you for your vote.
Thank you for hosting tonight. Listen, it's a gift to be an American. And I'm running for president of the United States because I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing the division. I'm tired of seeing the anger. And I can see in the eyes of Americans their exhaustion. Their exhaustion from the petty, personal politics that have taken over this country over the last number of years.
Not like your entire campaign being about Trump.
President of consequence, to do the big things, to make sure that America's role in the world stays number one, that we stand up for our friends and allies around the world, and we stand up for what we believe in right here at home. And it's not to eliminate our differences. Our differences has always been our strength as a country, not our weakness. But you can't truly say you love America unless you're ready to open up your heart to every American. I'm going to open up my heart to every American as president, and I will make sure that I return honesty, integrity.
An open heart is very much in your future, I'd wager. Yeah, you'll be having fucking surgery on it, but whatever.
The Oval Office. We deserve and should accept nothing less.
Governor, thank you very much. Let's go to Mr. Ramaswamy now. Your 1 minute.
We've talked a lot about foreign wars tonight, but we're in the middle of a war right here at home.
We are, Vivek.
It's a war not between black and white or
chaos is a ladder.
It's between those of us who believe in our founding ideals and love this country and a fringe minority who hates the United States of America. And I think it's going to take a commander-in-chief to lead us to victory in that war, who first of all knows that we're in a war, second of all can't be captured by the special interests along the way, but third is from the next generation, somebody with fresh legs to lead us to victory. I'll shut down the deep state. I'll declare economic independence from China. I'll keep us out of World War III and then revive national pride in this country. I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. End this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the guts to step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now, so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just
Mr.
tell us the truth so we can have an honest debate.
Ambassador.
It's brilliant.
Ambassador
Chaos.
Haley, you have 1 minute for your closing.
Thank you. The world is on fire. We have a
Yeah, you're not the cunt with the fucking fire extinguisher, are you? You're the cunt with the flames. What are you talking about? The world is on fire. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we can really stoke those flames with rampant military spending.
a war in Europe. We've got a war in the Middle East. We've got China on the march. It is very important that we know how to defend our freedoms and how to defeat terrorism and socialism. We have to know the difference between good and evil. We have to know the difference between right and wrong. We need to know that a strong America doesn't start wars. A strong America prevents wars. And the way...
Can I just Google how many... The United States has officially declared war 11 times during 5 separate military conflicts. This, however, does not include the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq, as they were never stamped with congressional declarations of war. So 15 then. Right. Back to that strong America that doesn't start wars.
We can focus on that is to make sure we go back to the soul of America and be strong and proud again. And we can't do that. We can't win the fights of the 21st century with politicians from the 20th century. We have to move forward, and we can do this. I know we can do this. So join our movement. Go to NikkiHaley.com, and we will once again show what America that's strong and proud looks like. God bless.
Ambassador, thank you.
She nearly said bomb bless. God bless. God
bless. Your closing, you have 1 minute.
We must reverse our country's decline, and that is going to require leadership. I will take the hits, I will take the arrows, I will take the barbs, because it's not about me, it's about you. It's not about the past, it's about your future. We are going to fight for you. I am going to win for you and your family, and I'm going to lead this country's revival. As a veteran of the Iraq War and in the Navy, I will always put service above self as president. As the father of 3 young kids, I'm going to ensure that this country is left to the next generation in better shape than we found it. And as the governor of Florida, I delivered on all my promises, and you can trust me to deliver for you as the president of the United States. I am asking for your vote. I'll be a nominee that will be able to win the election. I will be a leader you can be proud of, and as your president,
don't smile.
I will not let you down. God bless you.
Governor DeSantis.
He did it. He couldn't help himself. He didn't smile.
That is going to conclude our debate. The next line says, if the audience can hold their applause. That didn't work out. But anyway, for just a few more seconds, I'll ask you to just hold the applause. On behalf of my fellow moderators, I want to thank the candidates for their time and for this spirited debate. Really good, deep conversation, and we appreciate you all being here. Thank you as well to our wonderful hosts here at the Adrian Arsh Performance.
Right, we can put a fucking pin in that. Right, so there you go. Now, the upshot, after all of the babble, as I already showed you, Tim Scott just dropped out. He was like, you know what, fuck this. Chris Christie's polling means he might miss the next debate in Alabama. Oh, Lord. Try telling that crowd not to cheer. They think they're at fucking NASCAR, right? And then... And anyway, this is the latest polling data off the back of the debate performances, and it's not good. It's very not good. Trump widens the lead over DeSantis in new national poll. This was the Messenger Harris group did the poll. It puts Trump leading the Republican primary field with 68% support, having taken 3 points off DeSantis. I think it's the first time since DeSantis' campaign started he's dropped below double figures. He's now polling at 9%. Nikki Haley got a bump. She's had back-to-back bumps in the last two debate performances. Now with the Koch funding, her campaign has legs. She'll ride it to the end. She's up to 7%. An agent of chaos, Vivek, who, if memory serves me correct, I think at one point he was polling as high as like 12%. He definitely got into the double figures at one point. He's now dropped down to 4%. His agent of chaos antics not playing out too well with the voters. But again, I think Vivek's in it to the end. And ultimately, I believed this from the start. I don't think Vivek's goal is to get elected as president. I think Vivek's goal is to get maybe a Veep spot or some sort of very prominent cabinet position with whoever does go on to win. You know, he's kissed Trump's ass throughout, and he's maintained a sort of, you know, adversarial but respectful stance towards DeSantis. He's absolutely pummeled Haley and everybody else, particularly Christie as well. So we'll wait and see how that pans out. But anyway, it basically means, all the other candidates that haven't officially dropped out yet are getting 1% or less, which if you've watched Succession, you know the joke. But anyway, obviously we've got the Tuscaloosa debate coming up next, which, God, it's gross. Hosted by News Nation. News Nation is the new renegade news network that hired Chris Cuomo from CNN. Chris Cuomo has been chatting it up over there on News Nation. So that'll be interesting to see their approach to hosting a debate. Trump, of course, will not be there. He'll be going to a private fundraiser in Florida. So that's where we're at. Now, just a couple of little El Gapo memes right at the end, because we love those. El Gapo, in case you don't know him, is some lunatic that sits in the chat, watches the vids, and then creates memes while I talk about American politics. He's done two. He's sort of like a real-time cartoonist, is what he is, which is a new novel approach. You don't get that on your other political streamers' channels, do you? But anyway, here it is. The first one he presented, we had this one. This was keep my child's name out your damn mouth. And you can see it's Nikki Haley slapping Vivek there in a Will Smith style. So we like that one. Very well done. Realistic. And we also had this, which was it's Ron DeSantis. I don't know how you found that face. It's Ron DeSantis as Stone Cold Steve Austin shooting people stone cold dead down at the border. So that's the thumbnail. That is the thumbnail, by the way. You've done it again, El Gapo. I need to send you $10 for the thumbnail you've just designed in real time, because that's an absolute banger. So well done. Well done to everyone that participated. Now, I haven't been thorough in my coverage because I totally took my eye off the ball, and so we'll probably have to do this at some point over the weekend. But because American politics is a nightmare that never ends, what ended up happening was I don't know if you saw, Gavin Newsom turned up to to the Florida debate that we just watched. And Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, he basically has been sort of running a shadow campaign, but he's also showing party loyalty because essentially Joe Biden can't be out there on the campaign trail, and you can't ask Joe Biden a question because he doesn't even know where the fuck he is. So Gavin Newsom has sort of been filling in, and like, this is what a competent candidate would look like. And it's almost like an audition because you have to think at some point the DNC must realize running Biden is a bad idea. So it could be Newsom. I do want to remind everyone, back in 2016, when we were doing the Richard Lewis show, I said 2024 should be DeSantis and Newsom. So, who knows, right? Like, that would be a mad pull, an 8-year prediction. But anyway, Gavin Newsom ended up challenging him to a debate. And while a lot of people have been going, why aren't you doing the DNC debates? Because there are no debates, because incumbent presidents don't do debates. A lot of people have suggested it would be DNC protecting Biden, and Biden should do a debate so we can all get a look at his mental competence and fitness for office. So instead what we got was DeSantis and Newsom debating. Now, watch this sort of in bed, and it's a nightmare because it's moderated by Sean Hannity, which is like you just want to blow your own brains out after listening to that guy talk for 30 seconds. Famously known for his outrageous temperament and fucking loud horn, bullhorn style, just shouting through interviews and stuff. So he's the moderator, and, listen, it's basically a 2-on-1 with Gavin Newsom. But it's got some, and it was pay-per-view as well. It was on Fox's private, channel. They didn't just upload it in full on their YouTube channel. They've uploaded some extended highlights. Yeah, exactly. But we will watch that because it is going to be important to the race, and maybe Newsom emerging from the shadows once Biden is put out to pasture by the DNC. Should that sort of happen. But anyway, there's some incredible moments in it, including at one point, and no pun intended, I shit you not, DeSantis pulls, that poop map you've seen on the internet of where everyone in California is shat in public? He pulls that map out and shows it to Gavin Newsom during the debate. No joke. And he says, you have shit everywhere in California, human shit everywhere, and the only time you've ever cleaned it up is when the Chinese came to visit, the Chinese government came to visit. So it's pretty wild, and, ultimately, it's irrelevant whether Newsom wins. It can sort of only help DeSantis's ailing campaign if he's able to score some points, which I think he sort of did. So we'll watch that, just so we have that, because there's no debates for a while. With obviously, we have to wait for the Alabama debate, and then pretty much after that, we're going to Iowa. So, it's going to be fun. But there you go.